Jesus, titty Christ, why can't people honestly engage with what she said? Why is it so hard for people to honestly address the specific things that she said? Why do they have to invent their own narrative about her? You guys know this about me. I think Contrapoints is just a fucking stellar creator. I've just never seen her not be like on point, you know? Like she's always come across as very thoughtful and compelling with the way that she makes her arguments. Here comes Hutch to play his part as the Zionist defender. Okay, looks like we're getting started right away in the chat. YouTube chat, I'm gonna rely on you guys to keep me grounded. This Twitch chat's gonna get weird. Let's just read what she wrote. Seems like a good place to start. What I really like about Contra's writing style, it's very structured. Like it's very, you can tell she's very deliberate with how she structures. I'm a bit more manic when I write stuff. I'm just kind of just like stream of consciousness. She's very structured. And I think that serves her in making a compelling argument in any given thing. Many leftists feel betrayed because I haven't made a video on Palestine. Do they actually want a Contrapoints video about Palestine? Will they be happy if I get in the bath and pour milk on a mannequin of Benjamin Netanyahu? No. I have posted about Gaza occasionally and have quietly given money to Palestinian aid organizations, but I think what leftists really want is for me to join their chorus of anger. They sense some hesitation on my part and are judging me very harshly on my presumed opinions. I'd rather be judged on my actual opinions, so here they are. Is Israel committing a genocide in Gaza? Yes. Do I oppose it? Yes. Do I feel angry about it? Yes. I also feel a lot of other things. Number 1, doom. The week after October 7th, it was clear the mood among Israeli leaders and civilians was overwhelmingly kill or be killed existential panic and unstoppable lust for revenge. It reminded me of the US after 9/11. There was no reasoning or protesting them out of it, nor was it politically feasible for the US to withdraw aid to Israel on a time frame that would make a difference. It would have required replacing most of Congress and overturning decades of bipartisan strategy and diplomacy. Even in the best case scenario, it would have taken years. So there was a sense of futility. But worse. I want to take these things one by one with you guys. So she's making a point right now that there was a sense of futility. Do we agree on this point? She is saying that there was nothing that we could have done to dissuade Israel from the course that they set out on. And there was nothing that we could have done here domestically as voters to initiate the kind of change that these people wanted to see, specifically ending arms shipments or sales to Israel. There was no way that this stuff was going to get done. She's basically saying that that was not going to happen. You were not going to convince Israel to not do what they did, and you were not going to be able to just replace that Congress with elected politicians who would be willing to vote against arms shipments or sales or financial assistance. We send about $3.5 billion of aid to Israel a year, and we sell them a shitload of weapons. Nothing was going to change that. Do we agree on that? That seems pretty straightforward. Notice that she's not commenting on the morality of this. You can think that it's immoral for the United States to materially aid Israel, and that's fine, but that's not incongruent with what she's saying. So I think most of us agree with what she said here. There was no dissuading Israel from taking the course that they did, and there was no realistic path domestically to create enough political pressure to change U.S. foreign policy, very firmly established, decades-long foreign policy that has bipartisan support. There was no actual mechanism to stop this aid from getting to Israel. Okay. Section 2, misery. The leftist pro-Palestine movement quickly decided that their primary goal was not merely opposition to the genocide, but opposition to Zionism in general. That is, opposition to the existence of Israel as a Jewish state. And here they decided to draw the line separating decent people from genocidal fascists, which had the following consequences. It shrank the coalition Zionist is a very broad category. Most Jews are Zionists. Anyone who supports a two-state solution is a Zionist. She's using the original definition of the word, which is the correct definition. A Zionist is anyone who believes that Jewish people have the right to self-determination in their own country, and more specifically in, historic Palestine, Israel. It was politically infeasible. What is the pathway that takes us from the present situation to the dissolution of Israel as a Jewish state? I don't see how this could happen without either a total internal collapse of Israeli society or else, nuclear war. As usual, leftists have championed a doomed cause. It introduced dangerous ambiguities. The vagueness of Zionism as a political Satan enables all kinds of rhetorical abuses. On the one hand, right-wing Israelis hold up all anti-Zionist protests as existentially threatening and inherently anti-Semitic. On the other hand, there's a long history of anti-Semites using the term Zionist in deliberately equivocal ways. So like Zog. What does Zog mean again? Zionist occupied government? What does Zog mean again? It's an anti-Semitic slur or phrase. What is it? Is it Zionist occupied government? Yeah. She's saying, when you use a term like Zionist, you're opening the door for overlap with a lot of, Nazis, right? It's just kind of ambiguous. Like, if I ask you guys, what do you think the word Zionist means? We're going to get like 5 different answers in the chat. And they all stray from the actual meaning. Like when I had the conversation with Vadim, we had a conversation, we touched on, how do you define Zionists? And he asked me and I gave him the correct answer, which is just, I already gave you the answer. And he said, no, this is a common misconception. What it actually means is like fervent support for Israel or whatever. But that's not what it means. He kept sending me messages after that conversation. It was like, I felt bad immediately after the conversation, and now I don't feel bad. Like, I'm not going to fucking violate his privacy and show you the messages, but it's like, dude, like, you don't know me. Like, we don't know each other. We don't know each other. We are not friends. We had a couple interactions before. Why am I getting multi-paragraph messages from you? You're not going to change my mind. What are we doing here? On the other hand, there's a long history of anti-Semitism using the word Zionist in deliberately equivocal ways, Zog, etc. Anti-Semites are happy for the opportunity to misappropriate the now popular, quote, anti-Zionist label to legitimize their agenda, and many people are not informed enough about anti-Semitism to recognize when this is happening. These problems are mutually reinforcing. So let's unpack this one now. First of all, do we disagree that leftist Palestinian activists immediately decided that it was not just about getting a ceasefire, it was about anti-Zionism. It was about opposing the state entity of Israel, specifically as a Jewish state. Do we disagree about that? Some people in chat are saying ethno-state, we should oppose ethno-states. That's what she's talking about here, right? Do we agree on this? Did leftist Palestinian activists immediately identify anti-Zionism as an essential, necessary component of their activism? I need your participation. I don't want to give you my take, right? I want to get a collective understanding of what she said. Everybody knows that this is correct, right? Like, yes, obviously, yes. So far, I have not read a single thing that she has said that has been incorrect. And I want to pull up a tweet of mine that I posted a couple weeks ago. And I think it's particularly relevant given the context, the recent context. Contrapoints' unrivaled superpower is the ability to provoke the most deranged responses you could possibly imagine by simply saying things that are self-evidently true and utterly uncontroversial. Nobody on this app does it quite like her. Boy, oh boy, is this a really good example of that. Everything she said so far has been more or less self-evidently true. She said it shrunk, but I think it shrank. She said it shrank the coalition. Zionist is a very broad category. Most Jews are Zionists. Anyone who supports a two-state solution is a Zionist. Does everybody agree on that? It shrank the coalition. It shrank the tent. When you mandate anti-Zionism as a part of your activism, if you want to be a part of this group, you have to be anti-Zionist. You are necessarily excluding the vast majority of people. Just right away, we can just you know, probably like 95% of the country are not going to be with you on this. She was incorrect. There was nothing we could do. Just because Israel is genocidal doesn't mean we have to hand them the guns and the planes and the bombs. But it's not you and me making this decision, Malika. You understand that, right? Like, you and me, we don't have a say. The way that funds are appropriated from our federal budget, that comes from the Congress and the president. She was saying that there was no mechanism, political mechanism, that was possible at that time because support for Israel had broad bipartisan support in the Congress, and obviously Joe Biden was committed to being an ally to Israel in that moment. So she's not wrong. She said that demanding anti-Zionism was politically infeasible. How were we going to, you know, how was this activist movement that had taken up anti-Zionism as their mantle, how did they possibly expect to accomplish this? Your guess is as good as mine. It's an argument that I've gotten into many, many times with many, many people in the last couple of years. Like, how do you expect to enforce a one-state solution where you dissolve the Israeli government? First of all, they have fucking nuclear weapons. They're not, they haven't admitted that, but everybody knows that they have nuclear weapons. So are you going to physically force them to dissolve their own government? I question what that would look like for, I mean, how do we invade a nuclear powered country and force them to dissolve themselves? Has that been done in the post-war era? Has a single nuclear armed state been like invaded with the goal of like ending that government and doing regime change? Did Libya have nuclear weapons? What is the pathway that takes us from the present situation to the dissolution of Israel as a Jewish state? Who's the we? How are we going to force them to dissolve their own government? How is that supposed to happen? There was no political like, I don't even know if Rashida Tlaib was saying that we need to dissolve Israel. I don't think there was anyone in Congress that supported this remedy. So that it was just, she's making the case that this goal was just completely out of reach. Like, there's no way to accomplish this goal. Like, none. She points out that when we use the term Zionist, that there's enough ambiguity that all kinds of various actors with all kinds of like morally reprehensible takes, like Nazis. This is language that a lot of Nazis use. And so when you use this particular language, you run the risk of giving cover to people like Nazis. Does anyone disagree with that? So far, this is page 1. So far, there's nothing that she said that is not self-evidently true. If you're honest about it and you think about it for 2 seconds, everything she has said so far is just self-evidently true. And I want you guys to notice she is not dwelling on and exploring the merits of Zionism. That's not the point. She's not saying that Zionism is good or bad, really. Like, it's not a judgment call on what Zionism is. It's just presenting the reality of the Israeli government and our own lack of any kind of political mechanism to enforce the end of Israel. It's just not, she's making the case very matter-of-factly that this was never on the table. It was never possible, which ties into her questioning the validity of this kind of tactic. It was a conscious choice by these activist groups, these leftist activist groups, to mandate anti-Zionism as a part of their movement. That was a choice they made, but what did it amount to? What did they expect was going to happen? She's saying it was kind of silly, right? Does Hutch ever actually talk prescriptively, or is he always doing this descriptive dance? I mean, we've gotten into prescriptive analysis in terms of like what I think would be the most ideal resolution for Israel-Palestine, or like what I think would be the most ideal or the most practically realistic solution to get us on to get them on a peace plan. But that's not the point of today's discussion. We're just unpacking what she said. All right, number 3, dread. The online left has spent the last 20 months distributing hundreds of photos and videos of dead Palestinian children. The main effect of this has been to create a population of people in a constant state of blood-boiling rage with no consequential political outlet. I fear this may be worse than useless. Anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism are conceptually not the same. and conflating them is dangerous. But in practice, the way Israel is perceived does seep out into attitudes toward Jews in general. I don't think Jews who feel isolated and wary in the current atmosphere are simply hysterical or hallucinating. Yes, there's communal trauma and hypervigilance. Yes, there's disingenuous right-wing ghouls dismissing and censoring all criticism of Israel on the pretext of, quote, fighting anti-Semitism. But there's also a valid fear of historical anti-Semitic patterns recurring, and that fear gives power to the right-wing Zionist claim that only Israel can keep Jews safe. Does this mean Israel should not be criticized and sanctioned? Absolutely not. But it's something I don't want to risk contributing to, if not outweighed by tangible benefits. So I approach the issue cautiously. So she's speaking to the general feeling of rage. So you build this political movement, and I would call the sort of like leftist Palestinian activist group. This is essentially a political movement, right? So when you build a political movement that is based on swimming in rage every day, but then you don't present that movement with a coherent strategy or plan that is feasible or workable in any real sense, all you're doing is you're creating a cauldron. I mean, I'm sort of expanding on what she said here. I don't know if she said what I'm about to say, but people are not at their best when they're just constantly filled with rage. You don't come up with the best thinking. You don't come up with the best possible solutions, problem solving. If you're just angry and you have no real outlet for that anger because now you've set anti-Zionism as the principal goal of your movement, there's no way to accomplish that. So you're just angry all the time, and that's it. Okay, so again, we're about 75% the way through this post, and so far, everything she said has been accurate. Section 4, bitterness. Much of the online left spent all of 2024 single-mindedly focused on Palestine and the complicity of Democratic politicians in sending aid to Israel. This campaign had the following effects. 0 Palestinian lives were saved. Not one fewer bomb or bullet was fired by the IDF. Not just that they were, I mean, there's nothing necessarily wrong with constantly talking about the issue, but they were single-mindedly focused on Democratic politicians and their complicity with what was happening in Israel, despite the fact that this was a broadly bipartisan thing. It was not just Democrats who supported Israel. So they single-handedly focused on Democratic politicians, and in the end, nothing changed. Does anybody disagree with that? So again, just another kind of self-evidently true thing that she said. It may have slightly contributed to the re-election of Trump. Does anybody disagree with that? She's not saying it was the only reason, but it might have slightly contributed to Donald Trump winning. Does anybody disagree with that? Maybe I agree with you very slightly. I haven't seen a lot of compelling evidence to show that this issue caused him to become elected, but there really isn't just one thing or the other. Like, his victory was convincing enough that you can't single-handedly focus on one thing. It's just a collection of things, you know? Like, if 50 people vote to elect someone to a city council seat in some small town and that person won by 10 votes, you can't blame just one person or another. You could just blame a collection of things, right? It may have slightly contributed to the re-election of Trump, guaranteeing that the U.S. will put no diplomatic pressure on Netanyahu for at least 4 years and making protests against Israel both riskier and less effective. Does anybody disagree with that? I can already imagine what some of the responses to that are going to be. I can already imagine some of you guys are probably already typing it out. Well, what did Joe Biden do to pressure Netanyahu? There are answers to that question, but I'm not going to explode the chat in a debate about this for the next hour. But you can find several examples of Joe Biden successfully pressuring Netanyahu on a number of issues. He did not pressure Netanyahu to stop the bombing, but there were plenty of times where he successfully pressured Israel and Netanyahu to do this or that thing. And now there's going to be 0 pressure on Israel to do stuff. And then also she's saying that because Donald Trump is president, protest against Israel is now much riskier and less effective. Does anybody disagree with that? I think it's pretty obvious that that's true. We're revoking people's green cards. We are deporting people on student visas. Not because they did anything violent, but because they simply criticized Israel. So that, I think, is obviously true. Trump is also incidentally a menace to me and basically everyone I care about. A perfectly enlightened being would feel no bitterness about this, but I do. I assume she's speaking to her experience as a trans person, as a trans woman, and pointing out that this administration is definitely more hostile towards trans people. Does anybody disagree with that? I'm just going to assume no. I'm just going to assume everybody in here is reasonable and intelligent enough to come to that conclusion. So basically, in totality, what she's saying is, by focusing exclusively on Democratic politicians, you perhaps contributed in a small way to Donald Trump being elected. And so your advocacy amounted to, 0 Palestinian lives being saved. And now all these other bad things are happening on top of that because of Trump. And she's bitter about it. And I don't blame her. None of this is the fault of Palestinians, of course, who are overwhelmingly the victims here. Some people had an issue with her saying this. There's nothing wrong with her saying that. There were Jewish Israeli victims. There were other victims on October 7th. However, obviously, Palestinians are overwhelmingly the victim here. I hope that someday American policy will shift in their favor, and I will continue to support that cause. Too long didn't read. See the situation as bleak, intractable, extremely divisive, and devoid of any element that could be appropriately transformed into political entertainment. That's why I haven't made a video about it. Hopefully it goes without saying that these are just my thoughts. I'm sure other bread tubers have different opinions. Bald Phoenix with 5 gifted subs. Thank you so much. Okay, we have ended her post. What issues do you guys have, if any? We can dive into that a little bit. The reality, and I think this is a thing that a lot of Americans maybe experience, but perhaps everybody with a government experiences this, but the reality is a lot of the times is that, we're very powerless to stop certain things. And I think we want to romanticize activist movements and protest movements. And I think we want to believe that if the people are just unified enough, we can, basically accomplish anything. And it's just not true. I mean, I don't want to break this like romantic veil that you guys have constructed to, that you see the world through. But there's a lot of things that happen in your government and in the world that you have no control over. None whatsoever. The criticism about posting news and videos seemed kind of dumb though. I questioned that a little bit as I was reading it, but I think in the context of what she's saying, it makes sense. Like, you have to couple it with, like, she's not saying necessarily that, this is my interpretation, I could be wrong, but she's not saying that there's something like wrong with posting videos of carnage and violence to educate people on what's happening in an effort to shift opinion and perhaps amass some kind of like political influence or pressure on our elected leaders to actually take action and maybe have some kind of an impact on this. Although I just, I don't, if the United States stopped sending aid altogether to Israel on October 8th, if we just shut that spigot off, I'm not convinced that anything would have changed. In fact, you could maybe make the argument that things would be worse if we weren't exercising any kind of diplomatic pressure when Biden was presiding during this time. Then you might say that things might have been worse. So instead of doing that, what the Biden administration did was, engage with them diplomatically throughout to varying degrees of success. After the first week of bombing from Israel into Gaza, if Biden said, okay, we are cutting our diplomatic ties with you, you are no longer an ally, we are going to discontinue our, annual $3.5 billion aid package to you, which isn't really a lot in our federal budget, let's just be honest. We're going to stop selling weapons to you. We're going to stop shipping weapons to you. Okay. Like, what does that actually look like? Early on in the conflict, the Israelis had no intention of allowing any aid into the country at all. The Biden administration went to them and they said, what's your plan for getting aid into Palestinian civilians? And the Israeli response was, I'm sorry, what? You expect us to do what? We're not going to allow aid into our enemies. Why would we do that? And the Biden administration said that that was not an option. And they let aid into the country. So, like, would that have been better? I understand it's kind of counterintuitive. I feel like on its face, people are going to be like, what do you mean it was better that we sent them arms? It's like, well, just unpack what I'm saying right now. These are very difficult things to reconcile, you know, that like, and so I think like, yeah, I don't think her point was like never post footage of injured or killed Palestinians. People should see what's happening. I think she's saying in the context of just like, you've constructed this political movement that has no realistic goals, and thus there's no achievable wins whatsoever. They've defined, what do you call them, win conditions? They've set their win conditions as this thing that is never gonna happen. It's just, I mean, at least not now. Like there was no realistic path to force the dissolution of the state of Israel. And so when you couple just daily images of dead children with a movement that has no real outlet for their anger, and then you direct all that anger exclusively at Democratic politicians, even though this is a bipartisan issue, maybe you can indirectly contribute to Donald Trump winning, and then not only does the situation in Gaza get worse, but now all kinds of situations get worse. I keep going back to the USAID cuts because it's blowing my mind here, guys. The death count in Gaza is harrowing. Obviously, that's death on a scale that human beings can't comprehend. It's horrifying. I cannot imagine being subjected to those kinds of conditions. And yet, when we are confronted with the potential global impact of winding down our USAID programs, estimates are that 14 million people are going to die. Can we just pause on that for a second? How many people globally have died from COVID? The death count as of December 2024 was 7 million people. If we take the numbers of, let's say, 80,000 dead Palestinians over the course of this conflict, what does that represent in terms of a percentage of the deaths that are estimated to come from USAID cuts? Am I reading this right? 0.5%. So the amount of death that we have seen in Gaza represents 0.5% of the projected deaths that are going to happen because of these USAID cuts. Can we start to unpack and understand why perhaps single-mindedly focusing on Democrats in the 2024 election year in terms of complicity with the Israeli bombardment of and siege of Gaza? We start to unpack how that may have led to, I mean, worse outcomes does not even come close to describing what I'm talking about here. Eric in YouTube says, this is an insane way to think about this. I don't really follow you. We're talking about the consequences of an election. If there was all this smoke for Democrats in an effort to, I mean, this was like demands-based activism. If we look at things like the uncommitted movement or just like the broad kind of leftist Palestinian, and maybe most of them voted for Kamala, I'm not sure, but like enough of them didn't that it might have made a difference in a state like Michigan, you know? We can't even, I mean, 14 million people, it's like we're getting into like the consequences of like World War II over the span of a couple years. Just harrowing death count. Not to sound like I'm targeting you personally, but you were pretty indicative of how hardline a lot of Democrats were in standing by the Democrats to contain Trump. It's understandable, but this is the same behavior that drove people away from Hillary towards Trump in 2016, only to be repeated in 2024. I'm not responsible for your behavior as a voter. You have agency. I'm sorry. Like there was 10 times less justification to sit 2024 out than there was in 2016. This kind of reminds me of, like, I'm feeling feelings that remind me of this part right here. A perfectly enlightened being would feel no bitterness about this, but I do. Let me just say that, okay? Let me just say that. I agree with literally everything that Contrapoints said. I can't find anything factually wrong with anything she said. That did not stop some of our favorite creators on the internet from opining. We got Vaush, we got Hasan, we got Vanguard. They were all, I think, upset about what she said. Okay, I'm seeing more support for Vaush, so let's get into it. The name of the video is "You Didn't Have to Post This." Seems a bit redundant. Nobody really needs to do anything besides like poop and pee and eat and sleep.
Contra drama? Dude, I don't want to. It's so bad. It's so bad. Everyone's already dunking on her and they're all already right. Big Joel.
Hang on. It's not everybody. It's everybody within this hyper-specific internet niche. Who cares? Who f***ing cares? Any reasonable, rational thinking person who read her statement was like, yeah, that's about right. I don't know what I disagree with here. Who cares? If this crowd of people are dunking on you, you've probably said something correct, which is horrible logic most of the time, for the record.
The problem fundamentally is that Contra, I don't think, has a good temperament for the social demands of being an online public figure who discusses politics.
I mean, she arguably has a better temperament than like most people, because most of the time she's pretty constrained, or not constrained, she's pretty restrained. When I go to her feed, she's not doing like, I can get like really aggressive and sarcastic and passive aggressive and insulting. And when I go to her feed, it's usually like very matter of fact kind of replies. That being said, I do think she maybe is too online sometimes like me, but I'm not even judging her for that. But yeah.
That doesn't mean that the videos are bad or whatever. They're not. It just means that like you get a lot of backlash. You get a lot of hate. And I think that, you know, it's like a weakness of heart, weakness of mind kind of thing. If you're put into positions where you feel like you're very emotionally pressured, that can cook your brain a little bit. That can push you in a bad direction. I'm not clued in. She put out this like rambling narcissistic post about,
if that's rambling, I mean, I don't even like, it was so structured. Like it was so, you know, that's not a ramble. Like a ramble is someone that's kind of doing stream of consciousness. Maybe they have a hard time staying on topic. She had a particular thesis that she was presenting, and then she explained that in a very structured and organized way. And she dared to mention the fact that her life has now become more threatened because Donald Trump won a presidency. That's narcissism. Like, if a DACA recipient posted something about Donald Trump perhaps representing a threat to their security in this country, would we call that person narcissistic? If you saw a DACA recipient post, I don't know if I'm going to be able to stay in the country, would you say, come on, bro, why are you centering yourself? Why are you talking about yourself? Is it narcissistic for students that were deported for pro-Palestinian sentiments? Would it be narcissistic for them to talk about that? Like, what a ridiculous thing to say. Like, how is that narcissism?
how she's anti-genocide in Gaza, but the reason she hasn't talked about it is because it's depressing and glib, and she feels like the left hasn't done anything productive by bringing attention to it, and it's the left's fault and the left's problem, and blah, blah, blah. So many leftists feel betrayed because I haven't made a...
What is the left's fault? Like Donald Trump? Like, what do you mean?
It shrunk the coalition. Zionist is a very broad category. Most Jews are Zionists. Anyone who supports a two-state solution is a Zionist. Mabdani, why wouldn't you visit Israel after becoming mayor of New York City? Oh, I don't have to debunk this, do I? Anyone who watches me understands why this is really bad. What she's saying is like arguing against the Holocaust without arguing against Nazis. Well, it's like arguing against the Holocaust without arguing against Lebensraum, right? The genocide in Gaza is a direct product of Zionism. Zionism is the reason why they were in an open-air concentration camp. It's the reason Hamas exists. It's the reason there are walls with automated turrets that shoot people when they come near. It's the reason why in the West Bank...
Okay, great. I mean, let's say I grant all of that. What is your plan for ending the Zionist project? What is your actual plan there? How do you imagine this playing out?
There are roads that only Jews can use. It's Zionism is the reason for all of this. Like, the Holocaust didn't happen because the people in Germany, the Nazis, said, well, we should just do one.
Imagine if I can construct an imperfect analog. Imagine if right after George W. Bush sends boots on the ground to invade Iraq in 2003, let's say a leftist anti-war movement sprung up in Europe, you know? some European tax money was going towards this war effort, right? Like, Tony Blair sent in some British troops to assist with the war effort, right? So, it's not the same, obviously, as like American taxpayers indirectly funding Israel with their tax money, but it's a bit of an analog, right? Like, let's imagine if the leftist anti-war movement sprung up in Europe at that time, and beyond setting as the goal, creating a grassroots political movement that could potentially influence politicians to, stop this war, or maybe influence your own government to not contribute as much or anything at all, right? Imagine if this leftist anti-war movement in Europe in 2003, this hypothetical, maybe now imagine if they set as their goal the end of the United States. We not only want our tax money to stop funding this war, we are not going to be satisfied until the government of the United States is dissolved. Is that a realistic goal?
It was the consequence of an underlying ideology that demanded the eradication of other groups as a way of expressing the supremacy of their own. Do you think supporting a two-state solution is Zionism? If so, there's a difference. So unfortunately, she's providing really bad analysis. The people who I know who have advocated for a two-state solution have done so as a way of addressing the immediate harm of Gaza being essentially like an occupied sub-territory of Israel, not a long-term goal. Because obviously, if you implemented a two-state solution, you would then still have a Jewish ethno-state. Like, that wouldn't change the fact that Israel, say in the...
Okay. Are we also taking up like Japan as a part of our project here? If the goal is to end ethno-states, are we going to start a commensurate movement to address like a Japanese ethno-state?
The West Bank, or however you drew the lines, right? Israel would still be... in law, Jewish supremacist. Like, the term a Jewish state is a dog whistle, right? Like when white supremacists say they want America to be a white country, America is already plurality white. What they mean by that, obviously, is an ethno-state. Like, duh. If a member of the AfD says they want Germany to remain a German...
Talk about lacking analysis. If we're gonna use that hypothetical to explore the merits of Zionism or whatever, it would make sense if in his hypothetical, if white people were an ethnic minority in various countries that they lived in throughout the centuries, and for thousands of years experienced persecution as ethnic minorities. And then, with that culminating in a world war where a tyrannical fascist dictator, what percentage of Jewish people were killed during the Holocaust again? 63% of Jewish people in Europe were just exterminated. So if white people were an ethnic minority and then they found themselves if 63% of them, of white people, were killed in a particular country in Europe, would we blame white people in that spot for wanting their own country? Would we say, oh, that's an ethno-state, so that's bad? Or would we say, kind of makes sense? I'm not commenting on how, like, 48 played out. I'm not commenting on... I have obviously big problems with the way that, like, Israel was established. But would we blame white people in this hypothetical for wanting their own country where they didn't have to fear this level of persecution and genocide? Probably not, right?
State. Like, let's not be stupid. You know what they mean. Even if they don't mean only like ethnic German people would be there, what they're talking about is a legal and social prioritization of those groups. Obviously, this is untenable. I don't think ethno-state should exist.
The context of Zionism, of course, was that it was in response to some pretty insane levels of persecution in Europe. I mean, particularly in Russia, towards the end of the 19th century. And the culmination of the Zionist project establishing a state of Israel was kicked into overdrive and actually materialized after 63% of European Jews were murdered. And yet, when I hear Zionism discussed, all too often it's framed as it's based on an ethno-supremacist ideology where, Jewish people think that they're superior and want to dominate, everyone around them. That seems like a really flawed analysis of like why Zionism even came to be a thing in the first place.
Exist at all. But at the very least, a two-state solution would take the pressure off, right? It would, in the immediate sense, free the Palestinians from being completely subjugated to Israeli power. So if a person believes in a two-state solution as an immediate harm reduction thing, I don't think that's Zionist. If a person believes in a two-state solution as a long-term goal in which Israel remains a Jewish ethno-state, that would be a problem. And I think that political dynamic would still produce things like...
I mean, the ethno-state label is a bit controversial when, over 20% of the Israeli population are Arab and have representation in government. And I know there's some issues there about like they have equal rights on paper, but I think there's still some issues of discrimination there. So it's not perfect in that way. But typically when we're talking about ethno-states, we certainly wouldn't be talking about a state that has minority representation in government.
This genocide, because you would still have a highly militarized supremacist.
I mean, this is just, tell me if you guys are picking up what I'm picking up, but it sounds like he is saying that a two-state solution is fine if your long-term goal is a one-state solution. Is that what he's saying? Seems like it. He's saying it's just a stepping stone to do harm reduction, but the ultimate goal would be, it seems like he's saying one state, right? I don't want to mischaracterize what he's saying. It sounds like that's what he's saying. And assuming that's what he's saying, which he might not be, but assuming he is saying that, it's fucking stupid. It's fucking stupid. What a ridiculous thing to say if that's what he's saying. 17%, according to the most recent poll in May, 17% of Palestinians in Gaza view a single state with equal rights as the most ideal solution. It's less than 20% of Palestinians in Gaza are saying that they would prefer to live in a single state with equal rights with Jewish people. What kind of polling do you think is possible in Gaza right now? There are multiple polls. This is just the most recent one. I mean, whatever the reason is, I mean, like, I think they have a good reason to believe that. Don't you? Don't you guys? I mean, I think that's fucking... I'm talking about the Palestinians in Gaza that don't want to share a single state with Israel. I get it. That makes sense to me. If you guys are just going to reject these concepts, I mean, first of all, I don't know why you would reject this idea. Your instinct is to be like, well, what are these polls? Da, da, da. There are various polls that reveal their methodology and, explore the data, and it's 1,200 people, 1,400 people, Hutch doesn't believe in an equal state. Why this insistence? If Palestinians in Gaza are telling you, we don't want to live in a single state with Israelis, why are you insisting on it? Isn't that kind of crazy? Why are you insisting that that's the only acceptable outcome? Explain that one to me. How do you explain that? What do you mean? Are you better suited than them? I thought this was about self-determination. I thought this was about living free from oppression. I thought this was about sovereignty. This is what they are telling you that they want. And people are still like, well, two-state solution is only a harm reduction stepping stone to the ultimate goal that I have decided is the best thing. And therefore, it doesn't make any fucking sense, bro. It's kind of silly. It's ridiculous. It's fucking ridiculous.
This Jewish state right next to the new Palestinian state with U.S. weapons, with far-right backing, like you get the point. It was politically infeasible. What is the pathway that takes us from the present situation to the dissolution of Israel as a Jewish state? I mean, withholding support, that would be a...
You're not... You didn't... Just finish what she read. Okay, that's great. Withholding support. Number one, would that even work? Like this, Number one, would that even work? Would withholding aid to Israel stop them from their current campaign in Gaza? No. Number two, how are you what is the realistic path to forcing a political solution in America? Like, what is the realistic path to forcing American politicians who are elected representatives in the Congress and the president for, like, what do you... There was no appetite for this. There was none. There was a few people in Congress were saying, let's halt arms shipments, but they were the vast minority. And she made the point that, it would take years to possibly build enough political power to, you know, achieve this outcome. Even then, it's a long shot. But like, there was no immediate method of forcing Congress to vote on this.
Like, maybe it would be more difficult for Israel to remain an ethno-state if they weren't backed by the most powerful country in the world who just agrees with everything they do and supports them. Like.
Okay, America withdraws all aid, severs ties diplomatically, and then, you know, China steps in and we're like, we'll never treat you that way. You really don't think that, like, having Israel as a strategic partner, good or bad, I'm not commenting on the morality of it, just in terms of the national interest, for sure serves our national interests. We benefit in myriad ways from this relationship with Israel. And if we give that up, you don't think someone else is going to step in and fill that void, really? Like, how is it actually going to change things?
Like some kind of actual line in the sand rather than what Biden did, which was multiple red lines that he would lie about. And then when Israel did like cross those red lines, nothing would happen. That would.
I don't even know. I think they're talking about Rafah, but these people are so brain broken. They have no. How many people in my chat right now would say that Biden violated his red line in Rafah? How many times have we heard this? Really? The red line in Rafah was for Israel to allow massive evacuation of Palestinian civilians before they pressed into the city, and did it wasn't even a bombing campaign. It was like a boots on the ground assault on Rafah. The initial plan that Israel was going to do was to do it while there were 1.5 million Palestinian civilians packed in this densely packed region. And the Biden administration says, no, you're not going to do that. You're going to allow these people to be evacuated before you press in. And then Israel held off on invading Rafah for 3 weeks while over 1 million people were evacuated. Like, okay, I guess it's better if Donald Trump is now in there and not doing any of that.
I mean, it would be a good start, right? Some kind of meaningful political opposition. I don't see how this could happen without either a total internal collapse of Israeli society or else, you know, nuclear war. I wouldn't mind a total internal collapse of Israeli society. They're currently doing a genocide. I don't know.
All right. What's your plan for that? Are you like a massive propaganda campaign? Like what? Are we doing AI deepfakes? Like, okay, you know, what's your plan to internally destabilize Israel to the extent that the government collapses? Like, do you have a plan for that?
I feel like there are worse things. Like if a country's doing like, listen, okay, I supported the UN intervention into Serbia, the bombing that we did of Serbia. And what Serbia was doing to the Albanians was nothing even remotely close to what Israel's doing to the Palestinians. So my line for when should UN warplanes drop, NATO, sorry, not UN, NATO, when should NATO warplanes drop bombs to pacify the aggressors is clearly way the lower than...
At least 120,000 Albanians were killed by Serbian forces. Most of the victims were children, women, and the elderly. I am not a math major, but that seems like, okay.
What Israel's doing right now. I don't know how the can support NATO intervention in Serbia, but not support intervention.
You're just lying, dude. If we stopped shipping not from Congress, from Biden unilaterally, it would definitely have stopped Israel from bombing Gaza. I don't know why you would believe that. You don't think that Israel has weapons stockpiles? You don't think that they would purchase weapons and ammunition from other countries if we just shut that spigot off? Also, the president can't permanently unilaterally stop these things. Like, you can do pauses or whatever, but if the Congress approves those funds to be spent on Israel, the president cannot just like stop that. As far as maybe there's some like legalese process thing that he can finagle, but
into Israel. I think the UN should occupy Israel. Get some blue helmets down there for 100 years for all I care. Jesus. And stop giving them weapons. Stop giving Israel more weapons. Jesus. And then there's this wonderful line. As usual, leftists have championed a doomed cause. That's really cool. Don't support desegregation because it's not immediately feasible. Don't support...
It was obviously feasible. It happened. What do you mean?
Support an end to the Vietnam War because it's not immediate.
They actually had like a structured, organized method. The civil rights movement, like, don't compare the anti-war like Palestinian like leftist activists with the civil rights movement. Are you kidding me? The Students for a National Students for Democratic Society or like the various civil rights groups, they were organized, they were calculated, they had a fucking plan, and it worked.
Immediately feasible. Don't support an end to the Iraq War because it's not immediately feasible. This is just you territory. This is like unsalvageable. It always, at the end of the day, people, weaker people than me, I should say, always circle back around to directing their hate and orienting their politics around aggression towards people that they dislike. And the group of people that have given Contra the most shit for previous livery have been leftists. So it comes back around to that. Anyway.
He thinks that she wrote this because she's bitter at leftists, not because she was doing actual analysis.
Yeah, this logically doesn't work. Like, armchair psychoanalysis aside, this just logically doesn't work. Basically, every progressive cause starts out as or more doomed than opposition to Israel today. Everything from gay marriage to Contra support for trans people. Like, right now, trans rights...
Gay marriage was not something that was necessarily accomplished because of any kind of like civil rights movement. It was accomplished because the Supreme Court decided on it.
Rights are looking pretty bleak in the West. Do I waver? No. I think we should put our foot down and hold firm on all of it.
What does that mean? What does that actually look like? We're talking about anti-Zionism. We're talking about dissolving the country of Israel and then turning it into a, single democracy. That is, if that's your ultimate goal, like are we going to get any specifics for like what that looks like in practice?
Including, participation in sports. I'm consistent. If every progressive acted the way you're recommending leftists act with Palestine consistently on every issue, nothing would ever get done. Also, right now... Sorry,
what got done? He'd have a point if they had some kind of win that they could point to, but like, what did you guys accomplish? What did it actually accomplish? Nothing would get done if everybody just gave up. Well, what did you guys accomplish? What did it actually amount to?
American support for Israel is lower than America's opposition to MLK. Or I guess what I should say is opposition to Israel is a more popular position than support for MLK during much of the civil rights movement.
I mean, this is just bananas. Like, Americans have way more control and influence over domestic policy. This is an enormous difference between setting a goal of codifying civil rights through legislation or constitutional amendment, but it ended up being that is way more achievable than influencing a foreign government to dissolve themselves. Who gives a about public approval polls?
It introduced dangerous ambiguities. The vagueness of Zionism as a political Satan enables all kinds of rhetorical abuses. On one hand, right-wing Israelis hold up all anti-Zionist protests as existential.
Magnet says, what did you accomplish won't be answered in America until 2026 and beyond. National perspective on Israel and AIPAC campaigns is shifting broadly. It is amazing to me that the leftists that she's speaking to are taking credit for Israel's dwindling approval ratings. What is this based on? Why are you crediting yourself with the fact that opinion polls show support for Israel waning? Why are you taking credit for this? You don't think it has anything to do with just people kind of watching how this is played out with their own eyes?
Essentially threatening and inherently anti-Semitic. On the other hand, there is a long history of anti-Semites using the term Zionist in deliberately equivocal ways. Yeah, sure, I don't really know what that has to do with the genocide, though. Like, there are some people who do that, and it's bad, and they should be called out. I don't really...
She's not talking... What does this have to do with the genocide? That's not her point. She's questioning specific language in the context of efforts to build an effective political movement. People can't understand that things like language, particulars like tactics and strategy and language, if you don't want to concede that stuff actually matters, then I don't have a lot of hope that you guys are taking it seriously.
Existing cause and manipulate it to serve their bigotry? Yeah, sure. I don't really see what that has to do with the underlying point. Anti-Semites are happy for the opportunity to misappropriate the now popular anti-Zionist label to legitimize their agenda, and many people are not informed enough about anti-Semitism to recognize when this is actually happening. These problems are mutually reinforcing. But there's a difference. It is the Zionists themselves who disingenuously conflate Zionism and Semitism, whereas it's the opportunist Nazis who jump on the back of anti-Zionist protests to take advantage of the rhetorical ambiguity that is being created by the Zionists, by the way, and weaponize it in the service of their own ends. Or in other words, the Zionists are doing the bad thing, whereas with regard to anti-Zionism, it's another group that's trying to co-opt the language. What exactly are we meant to do about that? Or to put it another way, how could you ever criticize Israel?
Do you not think people putting those images, those arguments in front of people's eyes is important in changing those opinions? I mean, sure, but this is stuff that gets covered by the media. This is stuff that gets posted by nonpartisan actors. This is stuff that gets posted by right-wing actors. The reality is, especially in the modern era when it's just so much easier to broadcast stuff that happens in the world, people, generally speaking, get tired of seeing violence like that. Are we ascribing that to like leftist activism? Do I even need to show you what the polls showed about like how Americans felt about the college protests, which in my mind, a lot of them were a fucking shit show? It pissed people off. That wasn't effective advocacy. Blocking Zionists from using particular paths on a college, they thought that was going to go well. Bananas. And then we have stuff like the No Kings protests, which was explicitly non-violent. That went over well with the public. Go figure. Holy shit, what a revolution. What a revelation.
Zionists put so much effort into conflating Judaism and Israel. Like it's like their main thing. They shield themselves with it. So as a consequence, they make it very easy for Nazis and anti-Semites to to take advantage of the rhetorical ambiguity. But what is the left meant to do about that, apart from being responsible when possible? It is, after all, like often young progressive Jewish people who are.
It amounted to changing opinions on the subject. Look at Zoran's elections. That wasn't unheard of years ago. I don't understand why you're giving yourself credit for public sentiment moving. It's so crazy to me. And I feel like you guys also give your credit for Mamdani's win too, but the reality is that they ran a very savvy campaign and he's super charismatic. You want to springboard off of Mamdani's win as though this is ushering in a new like revolution in American politics, and you are putting the cart well before the horse here, guys. A New York City primary? I'm sorry. Like, I've acknowledged that it could mean that more progressive candidates and run and achieve success in various cities all over the world. But if you're already extrapolating to the point where you think this represents a new paradigm in American politics, maybe you're right, but you are so far removed from that. There are still so many more steps that you need to hit if you want to get there. So it's fine to be happy about this primary win, but Jesus Christ, I think you're getting a little cocky.
Are at the forefront of these anti-Zionist marches like Jewish Voice for Peace, advocates against this old colonial ethno-state project. The online left has spent the last 20 months distributing hundreds of photos and videos of dead Palestinian children. The main effect of this has been to create a population of people in a constant state of blood-boiling rage with no consequential political outlet.
The last line, I feel like, is the most important line of the sentence, and we'll see if he touches on this. Like, this is what makes the sentence meaningful. With no consequential political outlet. It's not that posting videos of dead people to show people what war looks like is bad. But when you couple that with like a daily deluge of these images and videos with no consequential political outlet, it amounts to nothing but a cauldron of rage.
Share photos and videos. The Western left isn't in Gaza. The Palestinians take those videos and share them online because they don't want their suffering to be invisible. Not really the left that's creating that media. It's Israel.
Is he going to touch on that? With no consequential political outlet. That's her point. Are you going to touch on that?
Israel's creating, I suppose, the subject of the media, but Palestinians are the ones documenting it. I don't understand this point. I fear this may be worse than useless. Anti-Semitism...
You don't understand the point, really?
...isn't in Gaza. The Palestinians take those videos and share them online because they don't want their suffering to be invisible. Not really the left that's creating that media. It's Israel's creating, I suppose, the subject of the media, but Palestinians are the ones documenting it. I don't understand this point.
You didn't even touch on this. Come on, guys, do we agree? Like, This is the most important part of that sentence. With no consequential political outlet. Okay.
I fear this may be worse than useless. Anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism are conceptually not the same, and conflating them is dangerous. But in practice, the way Israel is perceived does seep out into attitudes about Jews in general. I don't think Jews who feel isolated and wary in the current atmosphere are simply hysterical or hallucinating. Kind of a non-statement. As previously mentioned, there are anti-Semites who opportunistically take advantage of the anti-Israel, anti-Zionist protests, but what...
A non-statement. She's saying that, you know, there is a heightened risk of anti-Semitism in this kind of environment, and American Jews who speak to this issue and voice those concerns, they're very oftentimes told by this particular crowd that they're hallucinating. In the case of Ethan Klein, like Ethan Klein tried to, I mean, I can't think of a better example. Ethan Klein tried to communicate why he was, as a Jewish man with dual citizenship in Israel, he tried to explain, like, I'm seeing some things that are making me really uncomfortable. And this crowd, I'm not going to say that Vaush's crowd is entirely the same, but I'm just saying, like, that ecosystem, they all collectively told him that he was, number one, narcissistic for centering the conflict around his own trauma, and number two, telling him that he was hallucinating. She's speaking to that, I think, and he says, well, this is a non-statement. Okay.
What does that mean? Like, the conflation of anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism is the policy of Zionists. Like, their goal is to do that. How do you turn this into an anti-left argument? Like, if you're so concerned about the conflation of these two ideas, why is...
You have to put it in the context of everything else she said. I think it's pretty straightforward there, but...
Every Zionist constantly screaming it from the rooftops. I would love it if they would stop. I don't think to be honest with you, I don't think Zionism in its current form has much to do with Judaism at all. The underlying project is, of course, based in the, you know, Jewish homeland, Middle East, so on and so forth. But as a political project, the way it manifests, it seems to be largely like a corporate and American Christian evangelical effort.
I don't even know where to... I mean, that is a very America-centric view. Like... I don't even know how to begin unpacking that. Like, the current Zionist project or the state of Israel is more a product of American evangelicalism than Judaism. Like, okay, that's...
Where Jews are weaponized to further, or the identity of Jewish people and their needs or perceived needs are weaponized by oftentimes anti-Semitic right-wingers in an effort to promote certain cultural or economic causes.
He's not wrong in the sense that, like, that's obviously a salient issue for evangelicals, but he's saying that the Zionist project, i.e. the state of Israel, is basically more of a byproduct of this American evangelicalism rather than Judaism, which is just wild.
You know, like, it's not exactly a secret that AIPAC and the ADL and other groups
Gayer than fanfiction says, Hutch, do we just let Israel do a genocide? I don't know if you're absorbing her point. The point is not to, like, not do anything. She identified a very specific element of their mandate. Like, the leftist pro-Palestinian activists mandated anti-Zionism, like opposition to the existence of the state of Israel, as a necessary component of that activism. And in doing so, set a goal that is completely out of reach in any practical sense. So I don't think you're asking the right question. Do we just let them do this or that? That's not the question. The question should be, like, what are some goals that we can maybe begin to start achieving? Like, what can we actually do? That needs to be, like, the second question. So if you determine, like, I want to do something, I want to be an activist for this or that cause. Okay, so you see something, you care about an issue, it motivates you to, like, take action in your own way. The second question that you need to ask, the logical follow-up, is like, okay, what can we do? Like, what are we trying to do? If you're trying to end the state of Israel, seems a bit lofty. I don't know if that's a realistic goal. That's, I think, her point, right?
Aligned with Zionism are usually used as bludgeons against the left, right? Yes, there's communal trauma and...
It was an arms embargo. That was one of their goals. But don't tell me that anti-Zionism was not necessary. Give me a break. We all saw how the culture, like, developed. We all saw how this anti-war cult, like leftist anti-war, anti-Israel culture manifested. It wasn't just an arms embargo. It was like an end to the settler colonial project of Israel. And, that's what she's speaking to.
Hypervigilance. Yes, there's disingenuous right-wing ghouls dismissing and censoring all criticism of Israel on the pretext of fighting anti-Semitism. Wait, that's not disingenuous right-wing ghouls. That's the entire Zionist establishment. Literally, like, that is the playbook. It's not just the disingenuous right-wing ghouls. That's the entire, from Democrats, Republicans, that's the main strategy. Look at what they did to Mamdani. That's in no way like a niche.
I mean, I don't disagree that some people take like any kind of anti-Zionism as anti-Semitism. That is a problem. I don't disagree with that.
That's why Israel does this. Israel makes itself hateable on an international and local stage and conflates Judaism and Zionism, and then does horrible things in the name of Judaism, allegedly in the name of Judaism. They do it for Zionism. And that does attract international condemnation, which they then use to fearmonger to further legitimize their project. But all of this is the strategy of the right. Why are we pretending that the left is doing this? Like, this entire essay post is pointing out things Zionists do, but then she turns around and says, oh my God, it's like the FD signifier video. I'm getting flashbacks. They don't want solutions. They don't want to stop the genocide. They just want to endlessly critique the genocide. Oh God.
I mean, literally true. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure they want to stop it, but
I'm being sent back.
They're more focused on this endless critique than they are exploring realistic win conditions.
Does this mean Israel should not be criticized and sanctioned? Absolutely not. But it's something I don't want to risk contributing to if not outweighed by tangible benefits. So I approach the issue cautiously. But there have been benefits to the widespread left condemnation of...
He's going to take credit for diminishing approval for Israel.
Of Israel. Democrats have been polarized against it very effectively, which is important. Like, if you... Like, keep in mind, man, the Vietnam War went on for, like, what, 7 years? Lyndon B. Johnson lost for re-election because people criticized his handling, and then the war went on for, like, another 4 years or something. Like... Nothing good happens immediately, and sometimes it doesn't happen at all, but you always have to try. There were probably
He's kind of indirectly making her point for her, because one of the reasons why Nixon won was because of like a fractured coalition on the left because of the Vietnam War. It was like a layup for Nixon because the left and the Democratic Party was just so fractured because of this issue, which led to Richard Nixon, who in turn intensified the bombing campaigns, not just in Vietnam, but he started to bombard Laos and Cambodia with bombs, killing hundreds of thousands of people, decimating these countries with bombs. That was a result of demands-based activism. It directly led to Richard Nixon. Okay, was that the better outcome?
So many people back in the 1960s who thought the civil rights movement was a waste of time. MLK, you're only polarizing people against you. The white moderates don't like the fact that you're stirring up trouble. All in good time.
People need to stop invoking MLK here, guys. I'm sure you can find other people throughout history that were important, like civil rights figures. MLK is not the guy to invoke in this spot. This was transcript from a speech he gave at the Rabbinical Assembly on March 25th, 1968. So this is after the 67 war, guys. I mean, they were in the thick of it. I mean, obviously things have gotten very messy and complicated. And Martin Luther King, as far as I'm aware, he never stopped advocating for Palestinian sovereignty. He never stopped advocating for Israel to give up lands that they seized from areas like Syria and Egypt. I mean, I don't know if he ever called himself a Zionist, but everything in his rhetoric indicates that he was. And it wasn't just about like realpolitik. Is that how you say that? It wasn't just about like practical considerations. Many people in the civil rights movement saw shades of their own struggle when they looked at the issue of millennia-long Jewish persecution. So there was a connection there beyond the practical realities of the geopolitical climate. We have a speech shortly before he died. Martin Luther King says, I think it necessary to say that what is basic and what is needed in the Middle East is peace. Peace for Israel is one thing. Peace for the Arab side of that world is another thing. Peace for Israel means security. We must stand with all of our might to protect its right to exist, its territorial integrity. I see Israel, and never mind saying it, as one of the great outposts of democracy in the world and a marvelous example of what can be done. How desert land almost can be transformed into an oasis of brotherhood and democracy. Peace for Israel means security, and that security must be a reality. Now, I have no doubt Martin Luther King, in accordance with his emphasis on human rights, dignity, peace, would be a loud voice for Palestinians if he was still alive. I have no doubt that he would have had plenty of criticisms of Israel in the decades that followed his death. But let's not get it twisted, bro. He was a supporter of Israel. And so to invoke him to compare Contrapoints to the white moderate that MLK alluded to in his letter from the Birmingham jail is just oozing with irony. It's unbelievable levels of irony to call somebody a white moderate when MLK's own position was very strong support for Israel, in the sense that he was a supporter of the idea that they should be secure within their borders. I'm not saying he supported everything Israel did, but he did support their borders, the state of Israel. Was he a white moderate? Was MLK a white moderate? Probably not. I don't know. The conditions for people in Israel-Palestine are vastly different from today compared to MLK's day. The information was much harder to come by. You're doing the thing that Vadim did, where you infantilize MLK. He gave that speech very passionately affirming Israel's right to secure borders after the Nakba, after the 67 war. Like, there was plenty of violence and war that had happened up until that point. Don't do this thing where you're like, oh, small beans, poor MLK Jr. He just didn't know enough. If he knew what I know, that he wouldn't have supported Israel. I mean, I just, based on his writings and his speeches, I don't know if I agree with you.
Sorry, it wasn't Lyndon B. Johnson lost re-election. It was Nixon won in large part off criticism of LBJ's handling, because he used that against the Democrats, and also he and Kissinger committed treason by prolonging the war to keep LBJ from ending it early. Where's the graph? I'm looking for Cassie again.
If only I, a Western leftist in 2025, was there to educate MLK Jr. on the realities of Israel, he would surely have my perspective, right?
I find it. God, I'm bad at this. I'm trying to find the polling on Democrats' opinions on Israel. Look at this. The shift, just 12% of Dem voters sympathize more with Israelis than Palestinians. U.S. voters were asked whether their sympathies lie with the Palestinians or the Israelis. 37% said the Israelis, 32% said the Palestinians, 31% did not offer an opinion. Among Republicans, Israel remains popular. Among Democratic voters, Israel's reputation is in shambles. Just 12% of them sympathize more with Israelis. 60% sympathize more with Palestinians. Dude, it's crazy. This is unparalleled.
To me, this is not crazy, to be honest with you.
In less than 2
Democratic voters are more likely to be anti-war, and of course their opinions shifted over time. Like, of course, are you taking credit for that, Vaush, personally, for this? For what?
Years, a seismic shift. So when Contra says that there's been no consequence of the left making this an issue worth planting your feet on the ground for, I disagree. I think your criticism should lie with the Democrats for continuing to do a very unpopular support, for continuing to support Israel when it's really unpopular with their base. Like, at what point does the blame shift from the left? Like, the left has very successfully made this a generational issue. So at what point do you turn to the Democratic establishment and you say, well, it's now on you for not acquiescing? And if your answer to that is, well, it's never on the Democratic establishment because they were never going to acquiesce, then why believe in politics? Why then never advocate for...
She told you in the beginning of I'm getting so frustrated. She told you in the beginning that, like, if that is the goal, to pressure politicians to maybe do something like pass a bill to strip funding or whatever, if we're talking about going for like tangible political results. She said that the only way that something like that would happen would necessarily have to be something that happens over the course of years. That was her point. Like the Congress that was elected and that was in place by the time this conflict kicked off, you were never going to be able to pressure them to pass a bill to stop funding to Israel. And so, okay, then what is your next option then? To approach it like a multi-year project. Like, fine. Like, I would be fine with that. Seriously, I would have no issues if the goal was, we're going to start a movement and our only goal is to replace elected politicians with people who will vote to stop funding Israel. Fine. That's actually a coherent political project. And I would argue it's doable under the right conditions. Like, that's not something that's completely out of reach, but it's not going to happen in 2 years or maybe even 4 years. That was the point that she made. And he's saying that because she said it was impossible to convince that particular Congress to do this thing, that there's no point in engaging in politics, but that's not what she said. Jesus, titty fucking Christ. Why can't people honestly engage with what she said? Why is it so hard for people to honestly address the specific things that she said? Why do they have to invent their own narrative about her?
Or anything, because the system will never change. Then why talk about politics at all? Why not just roll around in the mud like pigs?
That's crazy. She did not say that. She didn't say you're never going to be able to change anything with political solutions, so therefore don't do anything.
Like at that point, is it me or does this reek of privilege? This reeks of privilege largely, I think, because it's very me focused. It's very solipsistic. It's very narcissistic. I'm armchair psychologizing, but this is very much like me. You know, I don't know.
It's a post about her. I don't know what to tell you. If you follow various content creators, very oftentimes they will reference their own experience. That's kind of the entire pitch of social media. It's a new way to interact with people. It used to be that politicians were covered in tabloid magazines and Playboy magazine interviews, and then social media came around and people started talking about themselves and their lives. The entire point of the post was to address criticism that she had been receiving about why she didn't post a video about Palestine. That's the point of the post. Is it narcissism to post about yourself? Is that what we're calling narcissism?
If people are upset you haven't made a statement on Palestine, all you really have to do is say, I don't really want to cover that topic. It's heavy and you should all know what I believe. But to be clear, genocide and Israel. That's not difficult.
Give me a fucking break. If she said that, I feel like they would shit on her even more. Give me a fucking break. He would be saying the same thing. This guy is unbelievable, bro. He would be saying the same thing. He'd be saying the same thing. Oh, you don't want to talk about Gaza? So you don't think genocide is worth talking about? I'm sorry that it's hard for you to post about Gaza, but people are dying. That's what they'd be saying. We all know this.
It shouldn't be controversial to say the country doing a genocide. I don't know why. I just don't think it's that controversial. I don't think you would embolden anti-Semitism in your audience by saying so. And
she was pretty scathing in her evaluation of Israel throughout this entire letter. She didn't speak nicely about them.
And then people would probably be satisfied. I don't think the audience was demanding that she make a 2-hour video on Netanyahu where she pours milk on him. I think that's a straw man. You know what I mean?
I think she using flowery language. I don't think she was being literal, but okay.
If there was so people want me to cover tons of issues, right? I get emails every day and I often don't because there's just a limit to what I can cover. And I want to talk about stuff I am interested in talking about, you know, I have to, at the end of the day, I have to.
I don't know. Sounds pretty narcissistic to me, to be honest with you. I'm sorry. Climate change is set to displace how many hundreds of millions of people in the next 50 years? It's going to create a refugee crisis the world has never seen. It's going to kill millions of people. Oh, it's too hard for you to post about climate change?
To center it around what I think I can give a good...
Seems pretty narcissistic to me.
What I can talk about, what's in my ballpark. But if somebody was curious, man, why haven't you talked about X? Usually my response to that is oh, well, to be clear, that's how I think, but I just want to focus on other stuff. Nobody forced her to make this post. Chapter 4, bitterness.
So your criticism of her is that she gave a more detailed answer? That's the criticism? That she specifically laid out a very structured reasoning for why she didn't engage on the topic. Your criticism of her is that she didn't condense it to a tweet, to like a 180 character tweet or something?
Much of the online left spent all of 2024 single-mindedly focusing on Palestine and the complicity of Democratic politicians in sending aid to Israel. Providing weapons to people committing a genocide's pretty bad. This can't.
Why exclusively focus on Democrats? That's her point. Why would you skip over that? It wasn't just Democrats voting to do this. It was everybody.
Campaign had the following effects. 0 Palestinian lives were saved. Not one fewer bomb or bullet was fired by the IDF. Okay, well, at least we know for sure then she wouldn't support protesting against LBJ's handling of the Vietnam War. Don't criticize LBJ for his handling of the war. You'll just throw the election to Nixon. You're making the Democrats look bad. It's actually 1 for 1.
She didn't say don't protest. Why do they do this, you guys? Why is it so hard for them to honestly engage with this stuff? It blows my mind. Were they always doing this? Was I doing this back in like 2019, 2020? I honestly don't remember. Was I doing the same thing where you draw all kinds of like completely unreasonable inference, just make all kinds of assumptions, just violently strawman everything that dares to critique you and your movement? It just, what is it? He's like, oh yeah, so just don't protest. She literally did not even come close to saying don't protest. She didn't say that. She didn't say that. She said you should have coherent, achievable win conditions. That's it.
1, basically. Yeah. Okay. It may have slightly contributed to the re-election of Trump, guaranteeing the U.S. will put no diplomatic pressure on Netanyahu for at least 4 years. Yeah, Biden was...
He's about to say that Biden didn't pressure Israel successfully, which is a lie. Well, I don't know if it's a lie on his part. Maybe he just doesn't know. It's not true. It's just not true.
Such a good job of that. Yeah, no, I just don't buy that anymore. I don't think that Trump or Biden are any better on it. They're both totally indifferent.
I don't know. I personally think it's better to, allow aid into the country. I think like that's a better situation. Even given the awful violence that's occurring there, I think Palestinians were better off when they had U.S.-led administration that was like successfully pressuring to Israel to allow aid in the country. I think it was really good that, I mean, I don't know if you guys realize this, but like the initial projections internally when Israel was proposing a ground invasion of Rafah, like their whole thing was like, there used to be 23 cells of Hamas, and there's only 3 Hamas cells left, and they're all in Rafah. We've got them cornered. So now we're going to go in there and finish the job. We're just going to finish Hamas off. And Rafah is, I mean, Gaza's already tiny, but Rafah is just one city in Gaza. It's like just a little strip of land at the southern end, bordering Egypt. And there were like 1.5 million people that were densely packed into this region. And what the administration surmised was that a ground invasion without evacuating Palestinians first could have led to tens of thousands of people dead. I mean, civilians. The Biden administration estimated that potentially tens of thousands of Palestinian civilians would have died in that ground invasion of Rafah. And the Biden administration convinced them to let over 1 million people evacuate the region before that happened. Potentially, there's no perfect science to this, potentially saving tens of thousands of lives. Vaush is like, I don't see a difference between Biden and Trump. Okay. Hasan, like, there's that one clip, like famous clip of Hasan, was like, we don't know that Kamala would have been better.
Difference is Biden seems to actively want the Zionist project to continue, and Trump merely acquiesces to it whenever somebody in power close to him jabs him with a fork and reminds him, like, hey, we're supposed to be doing this. But otherwise, he'll just gravitate towards like the shiniest country, which is usually... At what point has Trump done anything meaningful to constrain Netanyahu? At any point, in the first term or the second term? Actually, I take that back. Trump did take a public stance against expanding settlements into the West Bank, and then Netanyahu just did it anyways. He just didn't listen. It's just like Trump, like in the first 2 months, tried to publicly pressure Netanyahu to stop doing the West Bank settlements, and Netanyahu was like, thanks for your input, just going to keep doing it. And then they leveraged the possibility of fully just like taking a full third of the West Bank, and they used that as leverage to negotiate good terms like along the Abraham Accords with Qatar and the UAE and shit. Saudi Arabia. This attitude means she will only ever support things in hindsight. Yeah, well, that's why people say like liberals are the people who support every civil rights cause except for the current one and oppose every single war except for the current one. I mean, it's a bit simplistic, but it's kind of true. I mean, in this case, now she says she denounced
liberals oppose, I don't know what to tell him, but like liberals very broadly oppose Israel in their West Bank settlements and the way that they've treated Palestinians in Gaza. I mean, both camps, quite frankly, but like Gaza is like a very different story. What liberals have an issue with from time to time is like excesses on the left. They have an issue with your tactics, with your strategy. And, you know, in the case of Vaush, he's not, I feel like he's just not really engaging with what she's actually saying.
Announces the genocide, but the whole post here is essentially just saying nothing matters, it doesn't matter anyway, and criticizing the left. So I don't really know, like, if a person said that they disavow the Holocaust, but then goes on to like talk about the many ills and strategic failures of people who also don't like the Holocaust, I think I would be quite confused about the intentions of the document, apart from a performative disavowal of any responsibility for continuing to discuss the subject.
I mean, it's insane to compare, you know, American response to Pacific theater of like the World War II to this situation. Is just I'm not entirely clear what his point is there.
Essay posting. I feel like you're missing some genuine points where organizing for Palestine could have been done strategically better. Yeah, no shit, but the same could be said of literally all protests and all things ever. That doesn't excuse this post. There are
okay. I mean, all right. Like, if you're saying that every like anti-war movement or grassroots political movement has made mistakes, like tactical errors, okay, we shouldn't talk about those? That seems kind of stupid.
are things said in this post that are pretty impossible to forgive. I get I like they're not like
Nobody cares, bro. I think she's fine without your forgiveness. I mean,
actually explainable.
Talk about narcissism.
You know what I mean? The
she's not asking for forgiveness, to be clear.
What is?
Nor should she.
Is it? As always, the left chose a losing cause. That one's pretty damn bad. And they.
The losing cause was dissolving the state of Israel, and it was a losing cause. You lost, obviously. You were always going to lose that. That's her point.
Have slightly contributed to the re-election of Trump, guaranteeing the U.S. will no longer put diplomatic pressure on Netanyahu for at least 4 years, and making protests against Israel both much riskier and less effective. Trump is also...
Will he even concede that? Like, it's now just so much more dangerous to protest Israel or Trump. Just obviously. Just obviously, right? Like, obviously. Would he even concede that? I mean, that seems kind of a big deal. Like, maybe that's a good reason to not let someone like Trump win, which is...
incidentally a menace to me and basically everyone I care about. A perfect enlightened being would feel no bitterness about this, but I do. Okay, so you feel bitterness that pro-Palestinian protesters caused Trump to win the election. Okay, so the
she feels bitter that these particular people, and I assume she's specifically talking about people that maybe wasted their vote or didn't vote, or even worse, voted for Donald Trump because they're accelerationists, but we're probably talking about people who either voted third party or didn't vote in this election. And it directly led, in some small part, they contributed to Donald Trump winning, which made the lives of trans people in this country worse. There have been tangible impacts. Now, for trans people, they have to have a fucking passport that shows a gender that is incongruent with their identity. Pretty fucked up situation. We got, what was the school? Penn State retroactively rescinding the medal for Leah Thomas and apologizing to everybody that was on the team at the time. Like, do I need to list the myriad ways where trans people's lives have been like directly impacted by this administration in really horrible ways? It's not valid to bring up that this is a situation, and anybody who contributed in any part on any level, like if you contributed to Donald Trump winning, then I think people like her have a right to be upset.
bit selfish. When will Democrats be held responsible for losing elections? Not in this document. I can tell you that much. Do you like? I don't know, man.
I fucking hate these people so much. It is not Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or Hillary Clinton that is ultimately held responsible or pays the price for losing this election. Kamala Harris is going to be fine. She'll write a book. She'll get a Netflix deal, whatever. Just because she was the guy She now is going to live a cushy ass life for the rest of her life. Joe Biden's going to be fine. He's probably got like 3 properties. Obama's out here just like crushing it with $400 million next Netflix deals and shit. They're not the ones who pay the price. Your attempt to hold the Democratic Party accountable and punish them for what you determine to be unforgivable sins, it's not them who pay the price. It's people from particularly marginalized groups that are more vulnerable now because of this situation. They pay the price. Students that are here on visa that got deported because they wrote an op-ed criticizing Israel, they pay the price. 14 million people that die because of USAID cuts. There's mothers watching their babies starve in the Sudan right now because we just stopped giving them food for no reason. It's already happening. They pay the price for your attempt to punish the Democratic Party. Democratic Party is going to be fucking fine. They're going to be fucking fine. They will continue to exist as a political party. The pendulum will swing, whether it's in this next election or the one after. The Democratic Party is an institution. They're not going to crumble, nor would you want them to, unless you want total Republican political hegemony for the next like 3 decades.
I don't know, man. Maybe the Democrats shouldn't have done the thing. Maybe Biden shouldn't have spent like his final year in office endlessly.
Yeah, you guys, boy, did you show Biden. Let me tell you, man, is he crossed. Boy, is he in a bad mood. Kamala, shit. She started drinking wine at 4 p.m. instead of 6 p.m. in her $5 million mansion. God, what an awful life you gave her.
Capitulating to Israel and to the right, by the way. He was in agreement with the right on cracking down on the campus protests. Like, it went so far, and the degree to which the State Department lied to protect Israel, the fact that they were hiding internal reports, the fact that the State Department spokespeople were lying during their daily briefings to the point where it was like ludicrous. It was absurd. I mean, that part is understandable, low-key. The abandoned Harris stuff was lame. Nah, I'm not buying this shit, dog. Democrats lost that election. It was their election to lose, okay?
I don't know what to tell you. Sometimes voters make stupid decisions, you know? Can we not infantilize voters like this? Sometimes voters make dumb decisions. You know, if you see everything that's going on in the second Trump term, you know, and I guess you're satisfied with it, like, take your victory lap. This is the outcome you wanted, but don't pass the buck and be... Democracies require participation. Like, it's the one thing that we can do as citizens to potentially lead to like meaningful policy changes or laws or constitutional amendment. It's like the one thing we can do. We can do all these other like ancillary things, you know, like volunteer local community run initiatives, or, you know, maybe run for like the school board and shit like that. But the one thing that we can do to exert what little influence we do have is vote. And if you decided that this election wasn't worth that, then of course you partly own everything that's happening right now. You're not absolved. Like, of course you have a part to play in this. This is your choice. This is what you chose to do. You knew that like potentially doing that would help Donald Trump win, and that's what happened. So of course you're partly to blame for literally everything.
A terrible campaign. The Democrats were awful. They backed an unpopular genocide. They could have... Dude, do you have any idea how different the world would be if Biden wasn't a Zionist? If he had from day one been like, Netanyahu, October 7th was terrible. We are not supporting you if you invade Gaza. Flat out. Like, there are a lot of ways this can be handled. First thing, hostage exchange. By the way, remember, keep in mind, Hamas offered to exchange the hostages like day one, as long as the IDF didn't invade Gaza. They said no.
Come on. Like, what is this? Okay. Hamas on October 7th sends thousands of militants into Israel, who then indiscriminately murder, I think the last count was 900 civilians, including 300 at a music festival, including babies. There was widespread sexual violence on that day. And they took, what was it, like 300 hostages? And then the offer they make on October 8th is, we'll give you the hostages back if you don't retaliate. And did Vaush expect, like, is this a reasonable offer? Is this like an actual reasonable offer? Would any country on earth take that offer? If they took that offer, What would stop Hamas from doing October 7th as many times as they could possibly do that? Well, shit, I can't believe that worked. I didn't think they'd actually take that deal. I mean, let's do it. Let's run it back. What universe is this a realistic offer? It doesn't make any sense.
But Biden capitulated, enabled on every level what Netanyahu did with essentially no pushback. All the pushback that I was assured was happening by.
My position is the Bernie Sanders position, by the way. He said this on Joe Rogan a couple weeks ago, and they shit on him for it. But he basically said, like, you know, October 7th was this horrible atrocity. They committed war crimes, murdered innocent people, kidnapped people, and Israel had a right to retaliate. But what they've done in that time so far has gone too far. That's the reasonable position. Of course, Israel was going to retaliate. Of course they were justified in retaliating, but they've gone too far. That's the reasonable position. They hated Bernie when he said that. Holy shit.
Centrist Democrats was behind the scenes, deftly maneuvering. You know, the Biden was really holding Netanyahu's feet to the fire, and then he debated Trump, and it turns out that Biden was an incoherent, you know, gibberish speaker the entire time. He wasn't holding anyone to anything. He was barely.
Or Biden was prophetic, you could say, because we finally did beat Medicaid. When you think about it, he was totally vindicated by that. It's possible he has some sort of precognition abilities, like the guys in Minority Report. It's possible that he has access to, like,
able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID. With dealing with everything we have to do with.
This was brutal.
Look.
Oh my God, this was so.
Finally beat Medicare.
Technically it was Medicare. Possible he was just mumbling.
What's going on? Of course, it's 100% the Dems' fault, no doubt, but they didn't help. Come on. If you say it's 100% the Dems' fault, that means it's nobody else's fault. Sorry, maybe the Dems shouldn't have supported a genocide and ran a terrible campaign and ran a candidate who was so old that he couldn't speak properly, and then ran another follow-up candidate in the last few months that made.
Great, you punish them and now 14 million people across the world are going to die. That's phenomenal. Great work. Boy, wow, did you think that one through? I think I'm reaching my threshold for today. It's just difficult to.
Made a point of not breaking with Biden on any issue, no matter what, and maybe Biden shouldn't have had staffers that were protecting his reputation from the public and keeping him from actually doing.
He's not wrong about that.
Doing his work because they didn't want to show how incompetent he was, and maybe blah 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 blah. Oh my God, dude, the Dems put us where we are. We knew the Republicans were evil, okay? At some point, you have to blame the Dems. And sure, blame the Republicans, too, for being evil. I do. I'm not one of those, like, lefty types that refuses to criticize Republicans. The majority of criticisms I offer are of Republicans. But right now, the best chance we have at moving in a new direction for this country is Mamdani. Mamdani, to a lesser extent, Bernie and AOC, we need something different from the establishment, from the norm. And Democrats are the ones fighting like hell to keep that from happening. Why is it bad for Jews?
This time it'll be different. This time it's actually going to happen. Mamdani has kicked off a political revolution, and in 4 years, everyone's going to have health care because this time's going to be different.
Jews to have a state, but not for Palestine.
I'm sorry. If you're a progressive that is looking to unseat a more moderate incumbent, you are engaged in an ideological battle with someone. You are engaged in a contest for who can make the most persuasive argument to voters. You should fully expect that someone who does not ideologically align with you, i.e. a more moderate candidate who doesn't believe in stuff like democratic socialism, of course, they're going to fight you. They don't believe that you are selling good policy. But that's the job. They're working against you. They have a different philosophy than you when it comes to governing. It's your job to convince voters that they're wrong. Mamdani did a good job. He did a good job of doing that. But that's the job, you know? Take notes for Mamdani. Maybe don't copy paste Mamdani's campaign in a fucking purple district in Virginia, but you can certainly adopt elements of his campaign. Take what you can from his campaign that'll serve you in your campaign and leave the rest. Anyways.
Palestinians to have a state? You don't understand. To exist as a Jewish state, that's a dog whistle for an ethno-state. If Palestine was an Arab ethno-state, that would also be bad. And I don't think that America should give hundreds of billions of dollars of weapons to an Arab ethno-state. Is that fair? Yeah, that makes sense. Nice. None of this is the fault of Palestinians, of course, who are overwhelmingly the victims here. I hope.
Well, I mean, I don't know how you reconcile that with, like, I mean, you were just saying a moment ago that you think that Israel should have taken the deal to just take the hostages back and not, I guess, retaliate for October 7th. But Hamas are pushing for an explicit ethno-state, one founded on the principles of a very extremist fundamentalist version of Islam.
Someday American policy will shift in their favor, and I will continue to support that cause. But you're very loudly not supporting that cause, Natalie. That the whole point of this post is that you're not. The whole post is disavowing and denouncing and criticizing the efforts that have been made by the left to support American policy shifting in the favor of the Palestinian people.
How dare she criticize them, I suppose. How dare her? How dare her?
I don't. This is just incoherent. I don't know what she was thinking with this one. TLDR.
That is evident.
I see the situation as bleak, intractable, extremely divisive, and devoid of any element that could be appropriately transformed into political entertainment. That's why I haven't made a video about it. Nobody forced you to make this post. There are subjects I don't want to.
Again, a bit redundant. Like, of course nobody posted. She posted because she wanted to post it. That's it.
Touch on. Not many, admittedly. I talk about a lot of stuff, but you could have literally just said, the Palestine stuff depresses me, free Palestine, genocide. I don't want to make a video on it because what am I supposed to say? Am I supposed to drizzle milk over Netanyahu? No. And everyone would get it. And
Vaush seems to be upset that she dared to inject context and nuance.
To any of the people who were
in a post that took 5 minutes to, I mean, this isn't a long post, guys. Not even 5 minutes. This post should take you 2 minutes to read. Like, give me a break. Why are we treating this like it's War and Peace?
Still giving you shit after that. You could have just ignored them. You have a huge audience. She has some Twitter arguments that probably caused this. Yeah, like Contrapoints has been posting and suffering the consequences of posting for longer than I've been doing stuff on YouTube. I'm aware of how her playbook works, you know? She puts forward a thought, it gets misinterpreted by some people, she overreacts to the misinterpretation, gets really in her head about it, gets depressive, retreats, and then sometime shortly thereafter comes out with like a gigantic response that, depending on how much thought she put into it, either gets received well, like the canceled video of hers, which is excellent, or poorly with this. And boy, have people received it poorly.
I frankly, I would wear that as a badge of honor at this point. Like, if this particular crowd is reacting so hostily and with such irrationality, then you've probably hit a nerve, which, to be clear, is not a good principle generally. Like, we shouldn't just assume that because some person that you don't like, but in this case, I think there's some validity there. Yeah, it's like the Tom York post all over again, you know? Like, I didn't even read the Tom York post, but I saw people posting about it, and the people that I saw posting about it were people whose opinions that I totally fucking reject. As soon as I saw them shit on him, I was like, oh, what base did Tom York say?
Hopefully it goes without saying these are just my thoughts. I'm sure other bread tubers have different opinions. Well, these were probably written from a dark place, but they're also pretty defensible. So, pretty much everyone's dogpiling her except for Ethan Klein, who's very keen on it. You can take whatever you want from that. I don't, Threlixate. Why can't my left be normal, man?
I mean, to be clear, I think Ethan has better judgment on this stuff than they do.
And I mean, is Contra left? Not to besmirch.
I think sometime in the future, there are going to be entire college courses taught on how unbelievably ineffective leftists in the early 21st century were at building coalitions. Like, I legitimately think that there's going to be entire college courses. People are going to write thesis papers. People are going to write theses on this particular topic. Just how abysmally awful these guys are at coalition building. Because it's the same playbook every time. If you even slightly challenge their orthodoxy in any kind of way, in any kind of public way, they will cast you out. They will call you a right-winger. And then they wonder why, boy, are they coasting on this Mamdani win. Let me tell you, it's like a shot in the arm. Which, to be clear, I mean, you got to give it to them. This is like the first like really big win that they've gotten in a long time. So you really can't blame them for kind of getting high on the fumes. Is Contrapoints left wing? What are we? How did we get to this point?
The videos, but you know, liberal, left, progressive. So much of a person's political disposition has nothing to do with what they believe and everything to do with what they do, right? Like there are lots of ostensibly progressive people who believe in stuff like gay marriage and trans rights, who at some point in the past few years have decided that the true enemy to the rights for gay and trans people are those over-the-top trans people. You know what I mean? The ones who wear leather harnesses outside or are embarrassing online about their sexual predilections. They get it in their head. You know, this is like I mean, Contrapoints has talked about this in her video on cringe, which is also a great video, about how you get very, very fixated on your, like as a proxy for your embarrassment or self-hatred or whatever else, you get very fixated on what you believe to be the issue. And at the end of the day, no matter what your personal opinions are on gay people or trans people, if the only political content that you produce is dogging on obnoxious trans people, you're producing right-wing content. And a lot of these people end up getting sort of siphoned down the right-wing pipeline because then they get hate bombed by the left and love bombed by the right. And then inevitably their whole personality and identity is like the one good, you know, the person who used to be liberal but now realizes the real problem. People are very, very, very susceptible to being love bombed and hate bombed. Thankfully,
I will suck my own wiener in a video game on stream if Contrapoints has a Anna Kasparian coming out moment where she, you know, why she left the left. I would bet the farm that this will never happen in 1,000 years, because Contrapoints actually has like coherent beliefs and she's able to articulate those beliefs and her actions are congruent with those beliefs. I've never seen her like contradict her beliefs. The landscape is filled with grifters that do this thing that he's talking about. And yeah, of course they're real, they exist. But him trying to tie this to Contrapoints as though she is potentially some cautionary tale against this, number one, is not based in any kind of reality whatsoever. But number two, I feel like there is something to the idea of like, maybe don't excommunicate people who have a different view on a particular thing, but sort of line up with you on like 80% of other things, if not getting into specific policy prescriptions, but sort of like general goals or concerns. Like if you 80% align with someone or 90 or 95% align with someone, maybe don't like violently excommunicate them. Like maybe your movement is just sort of doomed to always be kind of a niche laughing fest. Like he's bringing up the fact that lefties on Twitter are dunking on her as though that's some substantive, meaningful thing. Like, who cares? That's supposed to be a thing to dissuade me from voicing an opinion? Oh, you don't want to do that because like Mike from PA and Denims are going to make fun of you. Who cares? So what?
What's going on with Contrapoints? Yeah, I'm gonna briefly touch on that as well. I said this like a while back where I was like, listen, this is not for like any person. I said this on my Discord a while back where I was like, now that it's becoming more like acceptable and appropriate for a lot of people who are terrified of their quote unquote brand being associated or tarnished in any capacity with like Israel-Palestine stuff, you'll see a lot more people like openly reveal takes, okay? Openly.
Wait, hold on. Is he tacitly accusing Contrapoints of catering her message in a way that is disingenuous so to preserve her brand? Tell me that's not what he's saying, right?
Say what their points are. I think, I mean, something I said back then, this was like months ago, was if you come out after like, 20 months of, or 18 months at the time, I think it was, of like, to like make a statement, and your statement revolves around like how all of these people that were correct from the start are actually evil and bad or whatever, and that
seems like an infantile summary of what she said.
Your feelings really matter in this process. Like if you come out and do any of that like wishy-washy shit, or if you come out and do any of this like both sides are kind of bad type bullshit when you're talking about like, free Palestine, then,
I'd have to read her statement again, but I don't think she even got close to like both sides bad Israel-Palestine. I've read that thing like 3 times. So like I didn't get anything like that in her message. Maybe he's not speaking about her specifically here.
I'm gonna talk about it. And that's basically it's sad to see, but that's basically what Contrapoints did, like to a T.
what the fuck? Like, what the fuck is he talking about?
Almost. Okay. And I like Contrapoints. I've never had any issues with her. I don't really care about like all the other controversies.
I like Contrapoints. I've never had any issues about her, but I'm going to accuse her of both siding a genocide and sanitizing her real opinions on the topic because she wants to avoid brand damage. Give me a break.
That she's been in.
It's condescending, patronizing, insincere shit, bro. With friends like these, right?
Or whatever. You know what I mean? She's, for those of you who don't know, Contrapoints is a bread tuber. She was one of the OG bread tubers. Like, she would make these really long, well thought out YouTube video essays, you know, bisexual lighting, all of that, right? And she had been, I guess, noticeably absent. I don't really run around being like, why is my favorite YouTuber not saying anything about this issue or that issue or whatever? I mean, it is odd when like you're a political content creator or you have major political opinions be known and you don't really say anything about like perhaps one of the most significant, one of the most impactful global incidents that is unfolding in real time. It is odd, but I never was like, why won't you say anything? Right. And I guess people were doing that a lot. So she did, she came out and like released something, not on Twitter, mind you, but instead on Reddit, which is, I guess, like a less hostile space to reveal this kind of thing. But Natalie is a smart person, like a much smarter, much better thought out person than these people that I'm talking about. She's not like a
You didn't accuse her of that. You're putting words in his mouth. That's your uncharitable interpretation. This feels like an episode of Black Mirror. Like, you know how on Black Mirror, they have technology in that universe where you can put like an electrode on your temple or whatever, and you can like block people like IRL. You can distort things and filter things in a way that doesn't challenge your bias or assumption. And so you can just avoid, like, you're telling me that he didn't accuse her of both siding the issue. Hang on.
If you come out and do any of that like wishy-washy shit, or if you come out and do any of this like both sides are kind of bad type bullshit when you're talking about like, you know, free Palestine, then, you know, I'm going to talk about it. And that's basically, it's sad to see, but that's basically what Contrapoints did. Like,
how did you miss that? I mean, like, you got to get the Black Mirror thing, like, take it off. Like, it's just, there's something, you know what I mean? He so clearly said that. I don't know how you heard that and didn't hear it. It's just, and at no point in her statement did she say like both, or even hint at both sides bad. That nothing like that was in the fucking statement. So he either didn't read what she said, or he's got his own Black Mirror thing on.
Like, look too deeply into this at all. But I guess like the reason why she didn't say anything about this for a very long time was because, by her own admission, it was because you won't like what she has to say. She was a PhD candidate in philosophy before YouTube. I know. I will say this much. As someone who really appreciates Contrapoints' perspective.
He's going to say some condescending, patronizing shit right about now.
As someone who has collaborated with her, as someone who's talked to her, someone who's met her, I will say I'm disappointed. I know that everyone will say,
who cares? Great. I'm glad to hear that, to be honest with you.
Told you so, whatever. But like, it still sucks. It still sucks. And maybe some people will say, what's wrong with her response? She didn't say anything wrong. And I think
that's, I feel like, pretty important. Did she say anything wrong? No? Okay. All right. Where are we going from here?
She basically crafted a message as to why she had not spoken about this issue that much, was because she couched it in like a hyper focus of whatever the online left is doing. How can you be disappointed in her when she did a friendly collab with Hillary Clinton? Yeah, I didn't really care about that too much. Like, I didn't read too much into it. And I know people...
You idiots. Jesus Christ. Goddamn morons. And she was unbelievably vindicated. I mean... Trying to help elect Hillary Clinton was the only rational thing to do if you have any kind of semblance of left-wing politics. But
people will say, well, she did a collaboration with Hillary Clinton. I think like that just spells that like someone is interested in pushing their platform further. That's what it could be. You know what I mean?
You don't think that it had to do with her like wanting Hillary Clinton to win over Donald Trump? It had nothing to do with that?
I don't give a shit. You know, BreadTube got a lot of people on the right track in the last 10 years. I understand why people would be disappointed. Can't be bothered with people post-game playcasting. Yeah, no, that's what I mean. Like, I think that she had a lot of impactful videos for a lot of people. Like, I'm not going to undermine that. I'm not going to discount that. It's like literally what I do. You know, I try to convince people not to be their old selves, right? And I think if someone has been impactful in a lot of people's lives in that regard, it just hurts to see. But in any case, I think this is her real opinion. This is just her true opinion, and she tried to couch it in an intellectual way, but I do think that it's a very cowardly way to deal with something that is so awful, so black and white. Not a lot of things are black and white in this world. I'll get to it. I'll start off with that, I guess. As you guys know, I normally shy away from.
Oh, she collabed with Hillary Clinton, I guess, in 2022. It was not during the election. Okay, who cares? And
talking about whatever is percolating in the takeosphere, right? I don't really talk about like the quote unquote drama and
yes, you do, constantly. Why does he do this? Why the fuck does he constantly do this? Yes, he does. What are you talking about? You talk about this all the time. What do you mean?
Things of that nature, but there is one exception, and that is when
Asmongold or XQC or fucking Destiny or Ethan or some says something that gets people talking. You talk about it every fucking time. Why are you pretending like Jesus Christ?
Someone has a political perspective or a take or something, especially as it pertains to this issue. That's usually when I explain the shitty drama. It's not like, I don't think this is quote unquote drama is what I'm trying to say. I think this is beyond that. I think this is political discourse. And I'm just going to go through this. YouTuber Contrapoints has posted her full take on Israel to Reddit. Okay. All right. Let's open the image in a new tab because there's so much happening here. There's a lot. It's an effort post. Okay. Contrapoints, YouTuber Contrapoints. And I think like it's significant that she posted it on Reddit rather than on Twitter because I think she knows like the environment. So many leftists feel betrayed because I haven't made a video on Palestine. Do they actually want a Contrapoints video on Palestine? Will they be happy if I get in the bath and pour milk on a mannequin of Benjamin Netanyahu? No. I posted about Gaza occasionally and have quietly given money to Palestinian aid organizations. But I think that what leftists really want is for me to join their chorus of anger. They sense some hesitation on my part and are judging me very harshly on my presumed opinions. I'd rather be judged on my actual opinions. So here they are. Is Israel committing genocide in Gaza? Yes. Do I oppose it? Yes. Do I feel angry about it? Yes. I also feel a lot of other things. I think if she had basically stopped it here.
Fuck it. Why is it like? Yeah, no shit. Like if she would have stopped it before she substantively critiqued me and my movement, essentially, then I would have liked it more. No shit. Because you would have skipped the entire critique, but she dared to give a nuanced take, and they don't like her because she criticized her. That's it.
Even here, this is like kind of silly to be like, look, I'm a content creator. I talk about a litany of different issues. I've done all of this stuff. Free Palestine. Boom. It's over. No controversy. Okay. No issue.
Oh my God. Is there an email list? Do they get talking points? Did an email get sent out to like, I'm not usually a conspiracy brain person here, but like, is there some kind of cabal, like some kind of like Illuminati structure on the top of like leftist content creation where they coordinate this kind of stuff? Like he's just immediately kicking it off with the same exact vapid criticism that Vaush gave.
Issue whatsoever. Like, why is this?
Alt Red Dragon with 60 months. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, buddy.
Why is this issue being treated as though it is annoying or it's inconveniencing? You know what I mean? If you live in the heart of empire and your tax dollars are contributing to unlimited bloodshed in the global south, but especially in Palestine right now, especially in Gaza right now, and your focus after 20 months is still on your personal feelings, how you feel about it, how the personal hysterics that you have developed around this issue because of the takes that you see online. Okay, if you continue to center yourself and you are just...
I mean, this is a bit of a logic leap, right? Because couldn't we flip that around on him? Couldn't we use the same logic on him right now? If we're, 20 months into this live stream genocide and you're using your platform to center the discussion around what Contrapoints is saying rather than addressing the unfolding genocide, does he not understand we can just flip that around on him and just and use this? By the way, we delved into there's a term for this, by the way. It's called relative privation theory, is that what it's called? Yeah. Hold on. No, relative privation fallacy. And we've all seen it manifest 1,000 different ways, but it's basically the idea that you try to discredit something that someone has to say because there's a bigger problem going on elsewhere. It's stupid. It's stupid. And ridiculous. Nobody works this way. He's not saying it because he literally thinks that she shouldn't, that she should be, addressing this other. He's not saying it because he wants her to talk about like the suffering of Palestinians. It has nothing to do with that. He's saying that he's using them as a means to tell her that she shouldn't be criticizing him. That's what's going on here.
Like me, perhaps the most spoiled person on the planet, living in the United States of America, automatically qualifies as the most privileged people on the planet.
I'm doing it the right way because I'm a better human being. And other people are doing it the wrong way because they're worse human beings who are, by definition, not as good as me. And so if Contrapoints was more like me and said the things that I say, then I wouldn't have a problem with her. But because she's not like me and she's in fact worse than me because I'm a better human being and I'm doing it the right way and I'm responding to this conflict the right way, I am better, essentially. Don't call me a hero, though. I'm just a guy, you know? I'm just a regular, I'm just a regular salt of the earth guy, okay? I'm doing the best I can, and I'm not perfect. I've responded perfectly to this conflict, obviously, but don't call me a hero. Just don't call me a hero, okay? I'm just doing my job, and she's not doing the same job.
Planet. Okay? Anything beyond unconditional support to the Palestinian emancipatory movement is ridiculous.
No, Hutch, she's using this chance to criticize the people who are being ethnically cleansed. It's weird. That's a ban. What a crazy thing to say. You got the Black Mirror thing. You got the Black Mirror electrodes. That's what's going on.
Okay? It's been 20 months. We've all seen the destruction. Stop trying to rationalize away and stop trying to normalize this death and destruction. It's not normal. People recognize that it's not normal, and our institutions are seemingly immovable, and yet we still persist, and yet we still continue to push them with the hopes that we can enact some sort of positive change, hopefully one day. If you're going to come out and be like, I was quiet for the past 20 months, but now I have a statement, and it's wishy-washy, and it's both sides bullshit, or focusing on like leftists online, then spare yourself and everyone else agita and just keep quiet.
Tough titties. I don't know what to tell you. This is America, all right? We get to voice our opinions. She said something you don't like, that's fine. Stop saying she shouldn't say it. Why, stop saying you shouldn't say it. She's giving her opinion on something. If you don't like the opinion, address the opinion and describe why you think it's the wrong opinion. That's fine. Stop telling her oh, you shouldn't even talk about it. What kind of ridiculous bullshit is this? This is fucking America.
Just stay quiet. There's no reason to just come out. There's no honor in coming out like this to be like, here's why I didn't say anything. On the other side of this, if you want to know my opinion on this, and I've said it before, and I've said this about ICE protests as well, anti-ICE protests as well. I said this about people who want to fight back against the Trump administration now, okay? If you get over yourself and you get over your own moral hangups or anything like that, and then you support the Palestinian emancipatory movement, and that's it, and you say free Palestine, it don't matter what I said in the past. I'm here. I've learned my lessons.
Oh my God. Bro! Do they hear themselves? Do they understand like most normal thinking people, when they hear this shit coming out of his mouth, they have the kind of reaction that they think everyone has about Contra. What a fucking unbelievable thing to say. If you had only said my very specific, rigidly structured, pre-approved statement on this issue and adopted my exact position, then we wouldn't have a problem. Who operates this way? Tankies, authoritarians. Lawson with $20. This conflict is a bandwagon with mounted turrets and fire depleted uranium tweets if you don't climb aboard. Jesus Christ, can we just rewind and revisit what he just said? It's unbelievable.
I've changed that. And then people who want to fight back against the Trump administration now, okay? If you get over yourself and you get over your own moral hangups or anything like that, and then you support the Palestinian emancipatory movement, and that's it, and you say free Palestine, it don't matter what I said in the past. I'm here. I've learned my lessons. I've changed my mind. Whatever. It doesn't matter.
This guy is fucking unreal. I can't believe people fall for this, man. I just don't understand. It's unbelievable. If you don't challenge us in any way, as long as you don't criticize us in any way, as long as you don't opine on what could possibly be really ineffective strategies at activism, then we're fine. and if you just repeat everything that I say and all the things that I believe, then I wouldn't have a problem. Who works like this? I just don't understand.
As soon as you do that, I'm with you. You know,
Have you guys ever heard me say something so fucking idiotic in my life? Have you ever heard me say something this fucking ridiculous? Besides my Aquaman take, which we can get into that. I stand by it. Have I ever fucking like reviewed someone's video and said like, as long like, you know, you shouldn't speak up because you're saying things that I disagree with? Who cares? Like, you're a grown up. You're a fucking grown up, man. You in your life, you are gonna encounter people who have totally different opinions of you, and some of them may go as far as critiquing you about stuff. Be a fucking grown up. If you disagree and you think you can present a cogent counter argument against the thing that they're saying is wrong with what you're doing or whatever, do that. Don't do this fucking ridiculous, like, just never criticize me.
Many others in this movement will welcome you with open arms. They'll always do that because we need the numbers from every different.
Well, I think she's touching on that, Hasan. You need the numbers. I feel like you're tacitly sort of acknowledging the problem that she was trying to address, but okay.
Walk of life from every different background, regardless of what.
I don't want any part in their movement, none whatsoever. If there's some other kind of like, I'm down for advocacy from other groups that don't do the crazy shit that these people do. I don't want to touch these people with a 20-foot pole. Apparently neither does Contra.
Their other opinions are, if they're united on this issue and they're protesting, then they're good with me. One, doom. She also like presented this Reddit post like one of her fucking videos, which is so crazy, like with the paragraph titles and everything.
Why is that crazy? Can we just stop there for a second? Why is that crazy?
The week after October 7, it was clear the mood among the Israeli leaders and civilians was overwhelmingly kill or be killed. Existential panic and unstoppable lust for revenge. It reminded me of the U.S. after 9/11. There was no reasoning or protesting them out of it. Nor was it politically feasible for the U.S. to withdraw aid to Israel on a time frame that would make a difference. That's just objectively incorrect. And it makes me feel like she doesn't know enough about this issue.
Poor Hasan. That feeble little mind of his. A tiny little brain of his. Can't comprehend that she's not saying that it's theoretically impossible. She's not saying that conceptually it's impossible that politicians could vote to strip funding for Israel. She's saying it is realistically impossible because there was no appetite for that in that Congress. That's what she was saying. She wasn't saying it's impossible to convince politicians to withhold aid to Israel. She was saying that Congress was never going to do that. Okay? And she was right. I don't even know if he would disagree if he engaged with what she said honestly.
There's only two options here. Either she's cynically misinforming people or she just genuinely is oblivious to this reality. And I think it's the second. It's just.
I have a lot of respect for Contrapoints, you know. I got nothing against her, but she's either stupid or dishonest. Friends like these, let me tell you.
Wrong. It is just wrong information. You are incorrect. Okay? You're just wrong about this.
Okay, put it on paper. Tally the votes. I want Hasan Piker to whip the votes, to go back to that Congress that was serving in 2023. And I want him to realistically plot out a path to getting like a majority support for a bill that would strip Israel of its funding. Show me the representatives and senators that you think were persuadable, which good luck with that with Speaker Kevin McCarthy. I guess first and foremost, you would have to flip Kevin McCarthy. If the House Speaker doesn't want a bill to go to the floor, it just doesn't go to the floor. You understand that? So first you would have to convince Kevin McCarthy. I don't know. I think that's a tall order personally. That seems a bit unlikely, but maybe Hasan has like a compromat folder of blackmail on Kevin McCarthy that he can deploy. Who knows? I would just love to. Okay, is he going to go into specifics here? Or
if this is the genuine logical framework, if these are the underlying premises that you are building your opinion off of, you're just wrong. I'm not even making a moral statement here. I'm saying you are wrong. 100%. It would have required replacing most of Congress and overturning decades of bipartisan.
The top line headline here is that Hasan thinks that Kevin McCarthy was persuadable. You know, we could go into more details and list every single politician that would have been very difficult to persuade on this issue, but we can just stop right there. Like, that's what Hasan is saying, that there was a way to create a grassroots movement that was capable of persuading Kevin McCarthy to vote against sending aid to Israel. That's what he's saying, which is stupid.
Partisan strategy and diplomacy. Bullshit. Even in the best case scenario, it would have taken years, so there was a sense of futility.
Wait, bullshit? You're not even. He's not even going to unpack that. Hold on a second.
Wrong. 100%. It would have required replacing most of Congress and overturning decades of bipartisan strategy and diplomacy. Bullshit.
Are we going to go into details there? What do you mean it's bullshit? What other mechanism was there to accomplish this goal of withholding aid? Like, what are we even talking about?
Even in the best case scenario, it would have taken years, so there was a sense of futility, but worse. 2, misery. The leftist pro-Palestine movement.
You're just going to say bullshit and just move on. Okay.
Quickly decided that their primary goal was not merely opposition to the genocide, but opposition to Zionism in general. It shrunk the coalition. This is the Will Stancil tweet. The left will never survive this. That the DSA is over. The left will never survive this. There will never be a left movement in this country ever again. That's what they were saying. That's what they were saying.
No, she said that principal opposition to Zionism shrank the tent. Like, what are you going to engage with that? Or
almost 2 years ago. Look at the situation now. The Palestinian emancipatory movement has never had this much support in the United States of America. Ever, ever, ever. Someone like Contrapoints, who is very well read on this stuff, cannot put 2 and 2 together. It makes no sense.
What are your tangibles here, bud? Okay, you got some public. First of all, I think he's conflating opinion polls that show a decline in support for Israel. He's conflating that with support for the leftist Palestinian activist movement, which I don't know how you can make that conflation. Like, if we asked American voters, I would bet everything I own that most American voters have a negative opinion of this particular group.
And it didn't shrink the coalition at all. So you're just objectively wrong about that.
It necessarily did. Like, if you said that anti-Zionism is a necessary component of your movement, it necessarily shrunk the tent. What are you talking about?
You look at the Democratic Party's base of support. I mean, the Harry Enton CNN Holy Toledo video comes to mind. Harry Enton points to Democratic Party support for Israel shifting more than 60 points in the direction away from being pro-Israel to being pro-Palestine by 42 points. So this coalition has grown, and I see it. I've mentioned this over and over.
Okay. Now let's do a poll for how many Americans think that the government of Israel should be dissolved. That's what the anti-Zionist project is all about. So, like, why don't we get into polling there? Because I've looked into those numbers and they're not great. I just need to tell you, really not great. Okay.
Over again, it was politically infeasible. What is the pathway that takes us from a present situation to the dissolution of Israel as a Jewish state? I don't see how this could happen without either a total internal collapse of Israeli society or else, nuclear war. As usual, leftists have championed a doomed cause. And at this point, it's like, it turns into just your own personal, incredibly petty, incredibly self-centered attitude about.
What does self-centeredness have to do with, like, this analysis? She's saying that she's saying that, like, there are only 2 ways to effectively end the Israeli state, the state of Israel, is just a total internal collapse of, like, I guess everything, government, infrastructure, whatever, society, culture, or nuclear war. Okay, like, what? She's right. Like, what are the other options for getting rid of Israel as a state? Like, what? Like, how would that manifest besides those 2 options?
Perfectly enlightened being would feel no bitterness about this, but I do. It's just so. I mean, this is so incredibly self-centered. It's crazy. And not because I'm, like, centering this around what she's saying, which is trans issues and how much worse they're getting under Donald Trump as opposed to Joe Biden, even though I think plenty of trans people would disagree with that as well.
Oh my God. I fucking hate him. With a burning fire of 1,000 suns. This fucking dipshit. Holy moly. He caught himself there. He caught himself. Did you catch that? He caught himself. I guarantee you his train of thought was like, well, hang on a second. I mean, I can't criticize a trans person for advocating for themselves. That would look bad. So he you see that? He caught himself there, just to be clear.
I do. It's just so, I mean, this is so incredibly self-centered.
Oh shit. Now it looks like I'm telling trans people not to complain about Trump. Let me clean that up real quick.
It's crazy. And not because I'm like centering this around what she's saying, which is trans issues and how much worse they're getting under Donald Trump as opposed to Joe Biden, even though I think plenty of trans people would disagree with that as well, saying,
Sure, bud. Sure, bud. I'm sure. I mean, literally, listen, we're a country of 330 million people. I'm sure you could find a few trans people that would make that argument, but
that a lot of these anti-trans initiatives kickstarted under Joe Biden, and Trump has just simply accelerated it.
I don't even. What is he talking about? This? What the is he saying? Is he talking about programs in red states that presidents don't have any control over? Like federal programs that went after trans people started when Joe Biden was president?
Reaching its logical conclusion. But not only that, but especially on the issue of Israel, this is even more.
You understand, like, we've identified, like, you understand that leftists like Hasan, they have to make the argument that Democrats are functionally really no different from Republicans. When we had a conversation, me and him, the way he described it was a marginal difference, which is incredible. He said there is in the margins, you can find a few differences between Republicans and Democrats, but functionally they're very similar. But you understand that this is a necessary part of his pitch, because if he were to acknowledge that Democrats are better than Republicans, then I feel like he probably think that takes away from him trying to pull people even further to the left. Like, he doesn't even want to grant that the Democrats are not just marginally better, but 1,000 times better than the Republicans on myriad issues. He doesn't want to grant that because then it makes his pitch a little bit harder. But if he can convince some young idiot, no disrespect. Hey, if he can convince some young idiot to that Republicans and Democrats are basically the same, then all of a sudden that pitch becomes stronger. We have a much better, like, our proposals are way better than what the Democrats and Republicans are doing. Join me on the faux leftist side.
More pertinent to the discussion, she is completely incorrect on this. What she is saying about, one, the singular focus of the left, at least here, a lot of people would say that I was singularly focused on Palestine. It was not the case, okay? There were a litany of criticisms that I had about the Kamala campaign, and
it wasn't just about like a singular focus on Palestine. It was a singular focus on Palestine and a singular focus on the Democrats. The Democrats. And we saw an example of that just a few minutes ago. They had no smoke for Kevin McCarthy, who was an essential part of the government that was authorizing these funds. Like, there was no smoke for Republicans whatsoever. And so when you're pitching to a lot of people, maybe they're just getting started with politics, maybe they're young, maybe they're just starting to become engaged with politics, and then then they start tuning into a Hasan stream, and what are you doing? He gets territorial, so if we let him up here, he doesn't want the other girl cat to get anywhere near us, which is kind of sweet, but it's kind of violent at the same time. If you're like 18, 19 years old, and you're starting to figure shit out, and you're starting to like understand what the dynamics are on a very loose level, you're starting to cultivate an understanding of historical context and, what the current political zeitgeist is all about. And all you hear from a Hasan stream is how the Democrats did this, Democrats did that, Democrats did this, Democrats did that with respect to what, this conflict, right? You can understand how that could potentially like make someone apathetic or distort the reality to the extent that person feels like they don't have a choice in the election that they can support, and so they just sit it out. Fucking stupid. Kevin McCarthy was the House Speaker. He was just as eager and willing to send funds to Israel. And Donald Trump was promising to just let them off their leash and just do whatever, bro.
Litany of criticisms I had about the Joe Biden administration, but it is crazy that, like, there is no logic here, because You should be mad at the people in power. You should be mad at Kamala Harris and Joe Biden.
Hey, bro, he's doing the thing. Number one, he just fucking skipped over her point, which is like, why are you exclusively focusing on Democrats? And number two, he's doing it again right now. Is he going to say anything about McCarthy right now?
Not just on Gaza, but on numerous different policies, because Biden was incredibly unpopular, immensely unpopular. He was old. He was decrepit. He was a beacon of a dying empire, of a dying party that had fallen out of favor. And Kamala Harris said, I'm not going to do anything different. They were too predisposed with trying to win with their own method, with their own strategy.
No mention of what Trump was promising. No mention of like Lindsey Graham's genocidal rhetoric. It's just 100% focused on Democrats, which was her point, by the way.
Strategy that they refused to see that this issue had changed forever. The real resentment should be directed at the people in power that refused to listen, that refused to abide by the principles of the democratic process where our
Also, any dum-dum that didn't fully appreciate the actual danger that Trump represented and contributed to him winning, which led to far worse outcomes.
electeds are supposed to represent our interests in an election campaign, during an election season, during an election year. Elections are supposed to be a pressure valve for people not to revolt because they feel like they have a say in this process. And the Democratic Party's refusal to hear the cries of its own base of support showed so many Americans that this is not a real democratic process.
Way to just fully prove her point, by the way. Like, way to completely validate her critique. You just did, like, without even, I don't even think he's aware of what's happening in this moment, where she wasn't saying like exclusively focusing on Gaza was a problem. She was saying exclusively focusing on, well, I mean, I would say it's a problem, but she was saying exclusively focusing on Gaza and then exclusively focusing on Democrats. And then what does he do? He turns around and complains about Democrats. It's amazing.
Process at all, which is the truth, but Trump is also incidentally a menace to me and everyone I care about. None of this is the fault of Palestinians, of course, who are overwhelmingly the victims here. Oh, thanks. Thanks, Natalie, for saying the Palestinians are overwhelmingly the victims here.
They are, you fucking turd. I'm sorry, but they are. You know, hundreds of civilians died on October 7th. Hundreds of people were kidnapped and taken as hostage in Gaza. They're victims. They are victims of terrorism. They're victims. But she's right. Palestinians have overwhelmingly been the victim here. But like any kind of recognition of like Israeli trauma or Jewish trauma just triggers this man.
I hope that someday American policy will shift in their favor, and I will continue to support that cause. TLDR, I see the situation as bleak, intractable, extremely divisive, and devoid of any element that could be appropriately transformed into political entertainment. That's why I haven't made a video about it. Hopefully it goes without saying that these are just my thoughts. I'm sure other bread tubers, in air quotes, have different opinions.
Hey, get down.
That was their take. And of course, when this unfolded on the timeline, everyone lost their minds, partially because, but what I don't understand about the entertainment part of this is that there is an entertainment component to what I do. I see that, I understand that, but it serves the larger interest that I have in getting people to change their minds. And of course, predictably, Ethan Klein looked at this and went, wow, I couldn't have said this any better myself. This is exactly the war I've been waging. There are examples of people that I have admired, okay? That, for example, I have a difference in opinion on. Bernie Sanders is one of them. But Bernie Sanders, regardless of his difference in opinion on this issue, does not... What's going on with Contrapoints? Yeah, I'm going to brief... Hopefully it goes...
The difference of opinion, by the way, is Bernie Sanders doesn't think that Israel should be demolished and dissolved.
Goes without saying that these are just my thoughts. There is an entertainment component, larger interest that I have in getting people to... This is exactly the...
He called October 7th an act of terrorism and called it war crimes and said that Israel had a right to defend itself, and that's what he disagrees with, to be clear. Hey, Beth, what's up? Thank you so much. We did get a fair bit of sun on the vacation.
Or I've been waging. There are examples of people that I have admired, okay? That, for example... I have a difference in opinion on. Bernie Sanders is one of them. But Bernie Sanders, regardless of his difference in opinion on this issue, does not make this the singular force of his political convictions. He understands that there are people who are far more radical than he is, and he never sits there and goes, fuck you for doing that. He doesn't get in the way. As a matter of fact, he endorses people that have a more radical position than he does. But as long as someone, regardless of their difference in opinion on this issue, okay, but as long as someone is not getting in the way of other people who are doing their very best when everything seems so hopeless in the face of
I don't care if you're doing your best. You think just because someone is doing their best, and you know, maybe I don't even disagree with the premise, right? Like, let's just grant that. Let's just say that all of these leftist Palestinian activists are doing their best. And so what? Because someone's doing their best, it means that you shouldn't ever criticize them, or you shouldn't critique them? That's what he's saying. That's what him and Vaush both said. They said, if she would have just ended her statement before getting into her specific critiques of the left, it would have been fine. That's a bit convenient. Don't you think that's a bit convenient? It's a bit silly is what it is, right?
Imaginable cruelty. When someone who has a disagreement, yeah, Brad Lander is another example, when someone who has a disagreement with all that, who doesn't make that the focal point, the central point of their politics, and doesn't stand in opposition of those who have passed their framework and sees them as allies, then I have respect for them.
Relative privation fallacy, guys. We found the term. Relative privation fallacy is this idea that you should never talk about anything other than the worst thing in the world. And it's stupid. It is nonsensical. Nobody works like this. The only time people ever say this is because they don't want to engage with your critique. You're saying something that makes them uncomfortable, or they don't feel equipped to honestly engage with what you're saying. And so what they do is they say there's this worst thing over here, therefore we shouldn't talk about your thing. In fact, you're being narcissistic by even bringing it up. It's ridiculous. Anyways, thank you guys for tuning into the stream. I'm going to go see Superman a second time tonight with Esmeralda. I will be going live on Sunday. We're going to try to make up for some days lost during the vacation. So we're going to do some Sunday streams for the next few weeks. And yeah, enjoy your weekend. I'll see you guys in a couple of days.